hypothesis.
Test with an experiment. Is the procedure working? No. Troubleshoot procedure. Carefully check all steps and set up. Yes, it is working. Analyze the data and draw conclusions. Results align with hypothesis and results align partially or not at all with hypothesis. Communicate results and maybe go back to the experimental data becomes the background search for new and future project. I'm gonna let welcome Dominique. I was just thinking about you. Talking about you. To our friends out there, whoever is listening. Let's see.
Good morning, Jeff.
Oh, good morning, Dominique. How are you?
Pretty good.
Let's see.
Yeah,
I heard you say something.
You still hear me, Jay?
Yes. How do you pronounce your last name? Tersini?
Yes, there you go, my friend.
And my name is Jairo. Jam Yang Tao. I got two versions of myself. The one with the red background is the phone, and the other one is my bedroom, messy room.
Only messy if you think it's messy.
But I know where everything is.
That's the most important part.
So how are you this wonderful morning? It's still a little dark outside. No, it's getting better, brighter. But it's kind of cold. I was thinking of going outside. But it looks kind of cold.
Get some fresh air, yeah.
What's that in your background?
Which one? The trees, the painting.
Your paintings?
Yes, those are my wife's.
Oh, your wife's paintings?
Yes.
Oh. It looks like modern art, kind of. It's like cartoony.
Yeah, she drew them years ago. It's a depiction of part of our lives and all that. So yes.
I was looking at through your Facebook to find that link to the Gnostic studies.
Good for you.
But I didn't find it. But I found one on science. That was interesting. Science versus scientism. Have you seen this? You posted it. The scientific method versus the science worshippers method.
Interesting. Don't dare ask questions. Construct a model based on data there. Well, data's usually conditions.
Yeah. So the one on the right, I guess is if we assume that science is correct, we do this. And well, we believe in science. Whatever they say is right.
guess it depends. Can I ask you something, Jay? Would you mind? Could you mute one of yours, because I'm hearing your voice twice every time you talk.
You're getting an
You're getting an echo.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. I'm trying to hear you, but I'm struggling hearing both voices.
Okay. Wait a second. Let's see.
Even if you mute one of them, I think.
Click on this.
Give me a second. Okay, you go first.
There.
There you go. Yeah, that's an interesting chart, by the way.
Do the other one.
There you go. I hear one of you now.
Whoa.
Thank you.
My phone went.
Turned off, or?
Phone went blank. Oh, maybe my phone died on me. So I have to, let's see, go over here. Oh, I know what I can do. Plug it in here. I can't hear you. There we go. Now I can hear you. And yes. So
What brought you to the journey of Gnostic?
Oh,
if you want to answer, if you want to share.
I find it interesting because, well, let's see. I think I picked up a book long time ago on the Gnostic Gospel, and there are some other books I've seen on that maybe I've picked up. I don't know. The Gnostic Gospel, but let's see, what is the Gnostic Gospel about? Let's see, the I haven't seen it in a while. The Gnostic Gospel. Oh, the Gnostic Gospels. Yes, that's about Gospels that aren't in the Bible.
Yes, very much so.
Oh, the ones that they found in the Nag Hammadi discoveries. Maybe that was 60 years ago, maybe. The Gnostic Gospel by Elaine Pagels. The Gnostic Gospels. Which ones are they? I think it's the Gospel of Thomas. Yes, that one's famous nowadays. Yes, the Gnostic Gospels provide engaging listening for those seeking a broader perspective in the early development of Christianity.
Thing is, Jay, a lot of people.
The author is Elaine Pagels.
No, I was just going to say that our race is still fascinated by the ideal that.
Oh, Mary Magdalene. People are fascinated by what?
Our race is still fascinated by written work. Gnostic just means inner. When you put it with gospel, that just means when people talk. But unfortunately, there's so many written works in the world, but Gnostic is about an inner search. So when you get inner information, I think you guys talked a while back, maybe Lewis talked about it ever so lightly about intuition, imagination, insight. That's not a written information. Oral teaching is when you have an insight and then you orally talk about it. The advent of writing, it's very primitive still. Very primitive. We have millions of books, but very primitive, So, and what it does to it, I don't know if you can see this, but what it does to the crown, the king and queen of our hemispheres, it teaches you to be very left to right, right to left. So, just keep that in mind, because I know you inquired about Gnostic. Gnostic and anything after Gnostic are two different things.
Oh, well, that are you saying that the essence of Gnosticism as a way of thinking or teachings is transmitted orally, essentially, and there may be books about it, but they have one cannot learn very much through the books.
You can, but it's a different kind of teachings. Like, I don't know if you realize this, most people don't, unfortunately. We have 12 receivers in the body. And when you disallow the king and queen, the crowns, to communicate, you forget intuition is in one part of one of the receivers, emotions is in another part. So when you're inspired, language is actually even kind of downgraded, because all different languages do different things. Like English is a meaningful language. Philosophers of old that were in Greek is a comprehension language. It's like Sanskrit's a healing language. So with all the thousands of different languages, they all do different things. So when a person reads information, literally reads information, depending on their language, their thoughts, then that's how they're going to comprehend things. Like, you can't see language, you can't see thoughts. You know, same you can't see emotions. Emotions are just expressed. I can give you a simple example, actually, or if you want to look at here. You'll see this material, we call it an object, but you don't see the word paper. You don't see white paper. You don't see white square paper. So when you realize that you're in an objective realm, material realm, anything that you describe it is in the spiritual realm, the unknown. So when you look at your hands, you don't see hand. You see a material that you call hand. Our experience are done in the spiritual realm, not in the physical realm. You know, the old teaching of the old language, it is an old language, but it's not a language spoken. The tree of knowledge of good and evil. The word good and evil meant spiritual and material. That's all it ever meant. The ego, the self, the condition part, like right now, me and you are talking, that's condition. That's the ego. We wouldn't, and most of our conditioning is done in the womb. So when a mother's, her neurons, and it depends who she's around during the 9 months pregnancy, that's all your conditioning right there. So when we use language, we use numbers. Numbers is another language. Colors is another language. Maybe you might be fascinated by this. The number 9, for example, if you multiply with any number except for the all-encompassing 0, the number always adds up back up to number 9, no matter what number you use. The reason for that, and I have to use the word reason, is because when the spiritual realm meets the material realm, that's the gauge of number 9. Number 8, for example, is Chinese love number 8. It's the infinite number. It's material number. So until people understand what language can and cannot do, opposed to just using it, you'll have a lot of philosophers talking about, truthfully, fuck all.
Wow.
Socrates was an elite person, but he didn't understand the material realm. And the material realm is just one linear experience. Like everything you see in your room, every time you give it a name or a letter to it, it's an experience. Hi, Louis.
Luis, this guy is blowing my mind.
Good morning. How you doing? Who's
Luis
here?
Del Pino, welcome.
Hey there. What was your name? I'm sorry.
Welcome, Dominique.
Dominique.
Yep, Dominique.
How do you say your last name?
Wonderful. Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you, Luis.
How do you say your last name, Dominique?
Tersini. Origin from Italy.
Italian?
Yes.
Domenico Torcini.
Thank you, Luis. Yes. Domenico for Sunday, the Latin for Sunday.
Yeah, Domenico Domingo. Sunday, yes, sir.
I was just sharing with. Go ahead.
Yes, Dominique Tersini was for the past week or two has been watching our videos on Wake Up and Think Clearly, and maybe he has a connection with Joel in Toronto because he's in Toronto, and he joined and he got my attention because he was trying to join, and he also befriended me on Facebook, and I was looking through his feed on Facebook and found some things interesting, and I was interested in Gnostic Studies group.
Nice.
and he was talking to me about Gnosticism, and that it involves more than just verbal language. It involves thinking intuitively, and if you pick up something like this, what happens in your mind when you see an object? No, that's not a good idea.
Well, I can explain it better, actually.
Louise,
what I was explaining was, we live in a material realm. So when we hold up a piece of paper like this, I could say the language, piece of paper, white piece of paper, white square piece of paper. You don't actually see the language on what we call the material. This is where old teachings of subjective, objective, this is just the material. So once you realize that, you don't see hand, you don't see hat. What you do is you're communicating with a language that's classified as an unknown, called the spiritual realm. So your experiences are done more in the thought and in the emotional realm. So we don't see emotions, we express emotions. So right. What I was tapping in with Jay there was, Gnostic is an inner teachings. We're going to use a downgraded thing such as language. Language like English, for example, as we're using right now, is a meaningful language of 4 languages combined. Old philosophers of old, if they came through a certain womb, they say they spoke Greek. That's a comprehension language. Sanskrit's a healing language. With all the thousands of languages we have, a lot of them do different things in the vibration frequency realm. So when a person is trying to communicate certain teachings, the written work is a very linear teaching. The oral teaching engages the 12 receivers that we have in our body. The king and queen, the crowns, can only comprehend so much when you're only reading written work. So this is why when people say Gnostic teachings, unless that teaching is done orally, downloaded, and then you share it externally, you're not engaging all your other receivers. And this is where intuition, imagination resides within all our vessels. Hence why know thyself. Who's the knower and who's the self? The self is what we call the ego. It's the conditioned part of us. I'm using a language to communicate. That's conditioning. But as I'm talking with you, I have 2 liquids in my body, blood and water. Something else is functioning that, hence the knower. So I went on that much.
Beautiful explanation. Dominic, I want to tell you right off the bat that I understand deeply.
Thank you. Well done.
Everything that you just said, and not only what you just said, but the ramifications. So at all levels, because of course, the Gnostic experience is a unification experience, a coherence experience, an integral, holistic, all-encompassing experience, which goes beyond the word, which goes beyond thought as we understand it in human terms. So I want you to know that it's not very often that people understand such language. Mm-hmm. Or if they do, they think they do, but they don't. So they stay at the superficial understanding of that. But I want you to know, because it feels very good when you meet someone, mm-hmm. and you feel this unification of thought and understanding, of experiencing, which goes beyond words. The very words that you're saying are labels on the material thing, which et cetera, et cetera. And so sometimes we suffer, we shouldn't, but we do suffer at the emotional and intellectual and rational level, because we feel that we're onto something. And when we open our mouth, saying, listen, this is important, this is big. And then people look at us like, what the hell are you talking about? So it can be at the very least disconcerting to go, you don't understand what I'm saying? And that's the reality. Most human beings stay at the superficial level of life, what I call the conventional, the run-of-the-mill, conventional, day-to-day, little hamster on the wheel. But they cannot step outside of the wheel while they are in the wheel, and to go into this realm that is transcendent, not conventional, which transcends the words, transcends the materiality, goes beyond the phenomenal side of reality and goes into the non-phenomenal, which you somehow alluded to, which is the noumenal side of the yin yang. So there, I understood everything you said without any questions.
That's the most important part. For me, when I usually talk to my colleagues or friends, acquaintances, even my enemies, I prefer them sometimes because at least they'll be more of an agitator. Most people never develop in those 7-year cycles, first 7, then the next 7, then the next 7, critical thinking and emotional development. So I know when I'm talking to somebody that emotionally is not developed, hence why we have so many wars here. So for me, I just try to assist other people to understand for themselves because I'm never going to understand them. That's not my role. It never has been, never will be. But for me to allow them to say, okay, so let's play the game. I'm not worrying about you coming to my awareness, but for you to become aware. Why do you go to work? Why do you change federal notes? How does the skin work? But that's a struggle, Louis, for most people. And when they say, you know, I've heard some of my buddies say to me, Dom, you're mad. I said, would you be able to explain intelligence? I said, sure, you're playing a circle game with yourself. And most of them, I know they get offended. I said, so you're offended now by language. This is me knowing that I'm sharing with other fellow beings, because I'm always looking for fellow students for myself, because really I'm using a language that I realize I didn't create. I just get to experience it.
Yeah.
And I just struggle.
I don't struggle. I'm very lucky. I don't struggle. I don't struggle because other people struggle, knowing that there's very little I can do about it. I do offer knowledge, understanding, compassion. So I do my part to alleviate others' suffering. So that's all I can do, be a positive influence, a soothing, calming coherence in my environment. But I know very well that the environment is going to change itself, unbeknownst to itself. And all I can do is, in my own perspective and realm and possibilities, bring coherence and compassion as much as I can, because that's what I am. So I cannot be coherent if I struggle, because precisely what I'm trying to permeate through is the non-struggle, the peaceful abiding, the ataraxic state of mind, which it trickles down from the combination of conventional and non-conventional knowledge, which is Gnosticism, the pure understanding of experience, or a pure experiencing of reality of itself without the filter of the mind. So the yoga, the reunification of the whole with the whole through its parts. And of course, if the part is talking about that and struggles, there's already some incoherence in there. It's like, wait a minute, you're talking about this and that and the other, and I see you all agitated and suffering because I'm stupid. So it doesn't make any sense. So in that sense, I've been able to bring coherence within as I speak of coherence without. And I find it very, very nice, very pleasant, because now I've been able to seize suffering vicariously. I don't suffer through others. Any suffering is necessarily of my own making, regardless of what's going on. And that's truly the true wisdom, is to know where the suffering comes from. Well, and the suffering always comes from within.
I guess, Louis, knowledge is the child of wisdom and understanding. So most people only will become aware of the one aspect of suffering, which is the resistance to pain. Removes pain all by itself, but it's usually the attachments, whether it's attachment to pleasure and all that. So for me, my compassion is my attachments, and that is my suffering, because I am compassionate. That I actually look at human race as a whole as as a disgusting race, and at the same time, individually, we've shown example. And I'm talking about me now. I'm always projecting. So I realize I don't have to go around and experience everything physically to realize we can harm each other, but at the same time, we can love each other. Like
we can love each other.
I've always made it a point for myself to say, the best way I can help the poor is not to become the poor. The best way I can help the rich is not become them. So at least I'll stay in the middle so I can associate with other people.
Yeah.
It would be naive of me to think that I'm at peace with myself. That is a very naive statement for me to say for myself. If a person decides to come to that awareness, all the power to them, if that's what they think.
Yeah, you just raised my eyebrows. You just raised my eyebrows because obviously you have been spending a lot of time on these ruminations, meditations, ponderings. You are in the way, in the middle way. You are in the middle way. You're walking the middle way, and because
around the way. Hold on.
Well,
that's an old teaching. I'm around the way.
Yeah, the middle way or the roundaway or whatever way it is. You already talked about the avoiding attachment.
No, I'm aware of attachments. I don't know where people get this idea that you should avoid anything. That's a very low-minded way of thinking. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah. Okay, let's not use that word. Let's not use that word.
You can. I'm basically sharing out loud how I actually correct when I hear things for myself.
Yeah. Yes. Well, basically, let's use another word. Search, seeking.
Okay.
Seeking. If you seek, you go in a certain direction, and in doing so, you avoid other directions.
Maybe.
If you go in one direction, you don't go into the other. So, is it avoidance or is it a choice? Is it a deliberate choice? And why are you going in the direction you're going? Basically, that is clear to all human beings. We want ataraxia. We want peace of mind. We want coherence. We want to be at ease with what is. And what is reality. So we want to be at ease with reality, which includes the inside reality, the outside reality, the inner world, the outer world, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, if we are able to understand there's no essential distinction between the inner world and the outer world, that we all are one same thing, which is reality. I call it reality with a capital R. Then it is almost implicit that each mind, which is a part of the whole, and I add the tag here that reality sees itself through each individual self-conscious mind with a certain degree of clarity and coherence, it is clear that each individual consciousness has somehow a conventional possibility to decide which is that it's going to seek. And of course, when you seek one thing, you don't seek the other. So you seek one thing, avoid the other, not because you say it's bad or anything. It's just because you're seeking something else. So, and that has been my. Hold on a second, guys.
Where are you? Where'd you go, Jay?
Maybe. Sorry about that.
No, you don't.
So what I'm trying to go to now is once we are in the proper direction, they call that samaditi in Pali, and I think in Sanskrit is samyakdikti or something like that, which is once we are in the right direction, and the right direction we decide, because the right direction is what I say. It's absolute to myself relative to anybody else. But since I am the one...
Louis, can I say something jokingly? I'll say this to my buddies. I say, do 4 rights and you've done a roundabout. Well done. You're back to square one.
Yes.
So carry on. Sorry, carry on. I'm hearing you.
So basically, since I have the power to decide what I seek, because I'm self-aware, then I seek ataraxia. I seek coherence. I seek understanding everything. I seek omniscience, which is not knowing everything, but knowing the nature of anything and nothing concurrently. So since I have that that power, that will, then what I seek is precisely to find that ataraxia, that coherence, that, oh, okay, everything is okay. Reality is as is, and I'm fine with that. And of course, if I don't feel that sense of ataraxia, that, okay, things are good, even when I see somebody shooting somebody, then I didn't get there already. I'm still seeking. I can tell you my personal experience is that I have been able to put together a consistent way of searching and acquiring that type of ataraxia. So I don't suffer anymore. And that's what they call dukkha nirodha in the Four Noble Truths. The fourth noble truth. Actually, it's not the fourth noble truth. The fourth noble truth is precisely the way to seek and to acquire that gnosis, and then the result is ataraxia. The result is the feeling of peace and complete harmony with what is, no matter what that what is looks like or feels like or evolves like. That's me. That's my take on that. So it surprises me that somebody that is already in the way and is able to understand that a phone is not a phone. We just call it a phone, and it's an aspect of the whole. Is still somehow so in turmoil, churning.
Because you're saying words that I don't think, Louis, you pieced them together. Like, I'm only talking about the fact that you don't see thoughts and emotions, hence spiritual. Like the old language, and it is an old ancient language, but it was never spoken, tree of knowledge and good and evil. Good and evil just meant spiritual material. So when a person hears a good man, a spiritual man coming down having an evil experience, a material experience, that's the ego not knowing its place. So I've heard you chat for a couple of minutes now, and what I'm hearing is a seeker, but yet I already know, or I'm unaware that I'm using a condition, emotions, and thoughts. So if you can actually question reason, question why the written work teaches the crown to be very hemispherical, and realize that you have 12 receivers in your body, or that the thoughts that you have sounds and frequency, which affects the two liquids in the body, which sodium is carried through it. That's where memory cells are. Then you realize whatever we call reality is an internal thing. The material is only a reflection of the internal. So if a person's seeking, they have to give up the ideal or become aware that I'm going to carry over emotions that aren't mine. I have to carry over thoughts that aren't mine, because then you have to understand what language is. And language comes in variations. Numbers is a language. I've heard you talk about math. The number 9, here's one. When you multiply the number 9 with any number except for the all-encompassing 0, why does it always add up back up to number 9? It always does. Because that's the spiritual meeting the material realm. They're two distinct entities flowing within me and you. Like right now, as me and you were talking, who functions the blood? Who functions the water? When you go into a rest state or a sleep state, who's doing the functioning? See, a lot of times there's people that are philosophers or thinkers or whatever. What ends up happening is they forget. They're using language. They're using emotions that aren't them. They get to experience. Hence, know thyself. Who's the knower and who's the self? Observe the observer. Then you realize you're in an objective realm. Everywhere you see this hand, you don't see hand, obviously. So as one's seeking, you have to be very wary that it's kind of like love. Awareness and love are very similar in energetic being, meaning that if you see somebody that's very selfish or very selfless, as the observer, you're not here to interfere. But it's a person that says, but I don't agree with war. I said, and then you're so caught up in the ego. You know, this is my observation. My struggle is the lack of, sorry, Louis, I know you're going to share with me, but let me spew this out for a bit, because I'm only going to share a fraction of me today. Trust me, I'm only going to share a fraction of me today. So what ends up happening is we think that because I can intellectualize something, I'll talk about Hegel or Socrates. Well, they're all dead. I could give two shits about them. And I tell you that openly because I want people to realize it's the teachings, but it's within the teachings too. It's the energy that's with it. If a person's intent is, I'm going to seek, but I'm looking for an answer, or I'm looking for peace, which means silence. I'm looking for silence. Well, you're not really seeking that. What you're doing is you're trying to confirm. Only a person who says, I'm seeking without the ideal of a condition of an answer. 1 + 1 = 2, 2 and 2, and person will say 4. I said, but I didn't say plus. That's the person being in the moment. My suffering through compassion or passion comes because humanity has never truly elevated. Now, I can say that because I'm pretty ignorant, unaware in other areas of my life. You know, like, I get it. A lot of people will say, well, Dominic, but you don't understand. I said, that's not my role to understand you. And I'll tell my buddies all the time, I said, I don't give a flying fuck who you are. I said, you know why? Because it makes room for you to realize you are your own sovereign being. You have to learn to take care of yourself, regardless of what your parents or your community did or didn't do. This is where when a person says the Four Noble Truths, that's written work. That's a very childlike kind of view. You know, thinking that 10 Commandments, Four Noble Truths, the Torah, religion, all the dogmas. The number one law, obviously, you know this, Lou, is commerce. Because people think, well, I'm chasing money. No, you're using your energy in exchange, what, for your needs or your wants? Wants just means lack. So until a person starts investigating and meditating, debating, revolting within oneself,
yes.
Then and only then they can have conversations where we can share and hear each other. Listening is always, with me, is always done from within. So I'm going to hear other people talk with me. But when I hear people say, Dominic, but I understand you, I said, you can't see through my senses. And I'm not talking about the 5 senses. We have many senses. Rest is a sense. Sleep is a sense. We're in some sort of what we use in this day and age, a high-tech program. So am I using my onboard program, my under program? Like, nobody makes steel. And then somebody says, well, what do you mean about the alchemy of steel? I said, you don't see the word steel. So you're just seeing material shapeshift. Who does that? Not me and you. Maybe Lewis, you might be an exception to the rule, but I'm not. I know myself. I'll look at a car and I'll see all the alchemy.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about the language too.
Yeah.
And then we use words like gods and aliens.
Yes,
and
I went on. At first, the dogmatism is the enemy of free thinking, free association, and creation. So yeah, I'm not dogmatic at all. When I mention something, I don't mention as a dogmatic book. For example, I'm not religious at all. You can consider me what they call an atheist. Carl Jung was asked the question.
You converted to another religion.
No,
sorry,
no,
Louis. Belief system has its value, but it has its limitations. Same with knowledge. We're all religious. I'm very religious in the sense that I pursue wisdom. That's religious.
Okay,
if we're
that's
talking,
me. That's me.
Then we're all religious. Then.
So let me give you my dogmatic view of the world. But it's always questionable, and it's like any other. It's relative to others. It's absolute to me. My conclusions are that there is one and only one reality. That reality is a natural, 100% natural. That's important to me. That there is no place in the world, or the universe, or the cosmos where there is a line in the sand that says from this point on, the natural becomes supernatural. So to me, there is one reality, which is infinite and eternal. And we can talk about that. Why do I say that it is infinite and eternal? So there's one reality, infinite and eternal. It's a process, a never-ending, always changing, organismic process. The dynamic between being and non-being, which you can say two aspects constantly interacting with each other, the phenomenal and the non-phenomenal. Phenomenal being anything that can be measured, thought of, imagined, touched, conceived, perceived. And the other one being pretty much 0 Kelvin, when nothing is going on. Those two aspects of the one reality are ever interacting, and the fact that reality looks like a movie and not like a picture tells us already that everything is constantly changing. So there is a constant interplay of being and non-being. So being and non-being is everywhere all the time, at infinity and eternity. Within that, we can say that if everything is constantly changing, we cannot ever talk about entity as something that is unchanging, dogmatically unchanging forever. So reality is not even an entity when you think about it, because it doesn't have an owner. It's just what is. And that's my view of of reality of the universe, an organismic, ever-changing interplay between zero, non-being, and one, any being. Mm-hmm. So to me, for example, when you talk about a iPhone, it's a series of zeros and ones. The word iPhone is a series of zeros and ones. The very perception of an iPhone is a series of zeros and ones. So just like in the movie The Matrix, which I thought was pretty smart, you could consider the reality an interplay of zeros and ones. But there's nothing behind the zeros and ones. So there are no two realities, the drabby one and then the made up one. Because, again, I say there's only one reality. And because there is only one reality, there is no stepping outside of reality. Because even if you got to the end of reality and you did not see anything, you would still see nothing. Zero. And because zero is part of reality, well, you're still in reality. Why do I say reality is eternal and infinite? It's because it's a series of zeros and ones. No matter how many ones you put after the other, it never ends. You can put as many ones as you want in combinations of, different zeros and ones that become things that we see. Because you can describe a cell phone in terms of a certain amount of zeros and certain amount of ones organized in a certain fashion. Mm-hmm. So I say, well, if that being the case, of course, it doesn't matter if I'm looking at a one or a series of one or a zero. I'm still looking at reality. Mm-hmm. And because there is one reality, it also implies that any perception of reality is a perception of reality by reality through reality. And in that sense, I propose that each self-aware complex consciousness, be it that of a mosquito, an amoeba, a virus, or even a elementary particle like a photon, or a very complex mind of a chimpanzee or a whale or an elephant or a human being or some other being out there in the fifth galaxy, is effectively reality looking at itself, living itself, experiencing itself with a certain degree of clarity with regards to itself. And that degree ranges from 0 Kelvin to infinity. And that's my my theory of everything. That's my toe.
Well, I know a lot of people lean towards open and close, and yes, that 0 and 1 ideal would work to that that paradigm. Yes.
But there's an added loop in there, if I may, Dominique, is that because of the quantum nature of reality, which has been observed for more than 100 years, and it is a fact, that the 0 Kelvin will turn into a very tiny one, the size of a quantum piece of energy, mm-hmm. which is about 10 to the minus 32 in dimensions, in 10 to the minus 32 meters, and 10 to the minus 47 seconds. The 0 cannot but change into a 1, and that 1 cannot but change into a 0 at the very fabric of reality. I know that in reality, 0 is 1 and 1 is 0. Again, 0 and 1 are two distinguishable aspects of the same one thing, which I call reality with a capital R.
That probably brings you some sort of peace with Lewis. I get where you're coming from, where you say about that. It's like when you look at a watch or a clock or the sun and the moon, and you look at the people that read astrology or whatever, they're looking at gauges or chakras when they have notes or they have colors to it. Those are gauges. Numbers is a gauge. It's not reality, but if that brings you peace by saying it over and over again, that's your mantra. You're going to make sure that all your cells align to it. So that's your mantra. So if you value the concept of 0 and 1, and this, like the sequence doesn't have the number 4 in it, the reason is because that's the gauge for time. So when people talk about 440 or 432, they're understanding it from the sense that it has different notes because he hears it, but they don't understand 440 means time, and encompassing 0. And then 432 is time, trinity, and duality. And then adds them all up together to number 9. One's number 8. So now you have to look at, they're all gauges. So if you think reality is either or, material or factual or agenda, that's going to be your mantra.
Well,
and that's fine.
Both. It is both.
Well, it could be many things, but you choose to make it both. Hence
it's everything and nothing. It's everything and nothing. So 0 and 1 are appearances of the same one.
And nothing, no thing is the all-encompassing. It's like the unknown and the known. The light is encompassed by the essence of the unknown, which is the darkness. This is a yin and yang, but we're still in the spiritual and material realm. Experiencing it, we're beyond all of that. But we want to experience within the spiritual and material realm. So we still think we're attached. I'm not the body, I'm not the thoughts, I'm not my emotion, but yet I want to play this game with numbers. That's a condition. That's the ego not knowing its place. That's all it is. Forget about killing it. It's about knowing its place. You go inwards and you investigate. So where am I getting this fucking ideal of zeros and ones? Where am I getting this ideal of reality? Then you start realizing, where's the word reality? Where's the thought? Where's the frequency? Then you're on your journey of seeking. But if you're okay with what you are, it'd be no different somebody saying he's a narcissist, sociopath. They're all different levels of underdeveloped emotions. And most people that aren't developed emotionally will use their emotions as a weapon. I was with a person that hurt me for so long. Why didn't you remove yourself? That's the condition. And a lot of that's done in the womb. Most of our conditioning is done in the womb, not just because of the neurons attached to it. And this is where physician theorists come into play, where I can only understand it physically. I said, okay, so then you're going to explain how sounds and frequency works from singing bowl or the pyramids, why they created all that kind of stuff, or how we get into disease mode because we've introduced frequencies such as radio frequency, internet frequency, electricity. That's how we get into disease modes. The physical is only a reflection of the internal world. But even that, the whole saying of seek within, we're receivers. The information is coming from another source, like a cell phone. We do not see the energy that comes from the text messages and the phones and all that. It's like when people talk about negative and positive. I said, I don't want to be negative. I said, so if I pull off the negative lead off my car, it should work. People don't understand the polarity of negative and positive and grounding. This is where people don't understand how the moon and sun works. Most of us don't grow our own crops anymore, so we're not going to understand. So when do I plant my seeds? When do I feed my animals? When do I eat my food based on the different days of the week? See, it brings comfort to you, Luis, and I'm not here to challenge you. I hope you've done that quite well on your own. I'm here just to be the agitator for myself, because I realize there's certain things in life, what we call life or death, are in the unknown. We could literally be in death. But meanwhile, we think life is something that I move my hands or whatever. Then you have to ask questions. Go ahead. Sorry, guys.
Wow, that fascinating. So I had to go take my mother to the bathroom. So I missed about 5 minutes. What happened? And Mike just joined us. He missed 20 minutes. What happened? What was the conversation like? Give us a summary.
Welcome. Big welcome to Mike.
Mike Taylor in Winter Park.
Jairo, I think you probably missed the secret of the universe.
Yes, darn it.
Being past you that one time, those 5 minutes, and it will never come past you again.
Just imagine that.
That's it. Wrong bus. You missed the bus, buddy.
No,
you have to take the train.
I'm still stuck on the piece of paper. When I hold up a piece of paper, what's happening in my mind? Or what's happening in your mind, Mike? When I hold up the piece of paper, do you say, oh, that is paper, now it has an existence. Or do you say
you just missed the question that I asked of Dominic. Obviously, he has spent as much time or more than I have in these non-conventional masturbations, and so he somehow expressed this harmony with the world, and he is agitated somehow because because the world the way it is. And I questioned that, because I said, because you have spent so much time in this, and so have I am surprised, because through these masturbations, I have come to a state of internal non-agitation, ataraxia, non-disturbance. And that's exactly what I was seeking to begin with when I was trying to understand. So first, I wanted to be happy, to use that word. In order to do that, I had to investigate, analyze, study, ponder. Then once I understood my understanding of reality, I was able to abide peacefully. So mission accomplished. I pat myself in the back, because nobody else does. In the morning, I look at myself in the mirror and I go, attaboy, way to go. You did it, Louis. You are a happy Buddha. And so to me, when I share my thoughts about, the zeros and ones and the nature of reality and how the human mind works, because to our knowledge, we are the most complex organismic thing that we know of. When I talk to other people, I say, hey, in case it's interesting to you, I abide in peace. And I would expect somebody to go, how the hell do you do that in this crazy world? How are you able to be ataraxic? Well, then I say, well, do you want the short story or the long story? And then we can go and compare notes and compare perspectives. But I don't feel the necessity for others to feel and understand reality and live reality just like I do. I am very keen on avoiding people that would try to harm me or take my ataraxia away. So just like a good Shaolin master, instead of fighting and conflicting, I'll share a little video with you. The novice is asking the master, how do we deal with violence and conflict? And he says, run away. He says, run away. But if you cannot run away, this is how you should deal with conflict, disharmony, etc., etc. There's a very interesting response that the teacher says. It's like, if you cannot run away, well, try to talk, negotiate, mediate. And then if you have to wrestle, don't go against the wave. Deflect it. Play, judo or taekwondo. And then, check rather than maim rather than kill. So I found that to be a beautiful answer. Go ahead, Jairo.
Please, I'm still stuck on the paper. And my limited
I'll let you ponder on that while I get myself a coffee. This is getting interesting. Plus, I only have like 10 minutes left.
The paper, the Dominic Tersini in Toronto introduced the paper. What happens in my mind or in your mind, when this is presented and the cognizer of the mind perceives this? Does the mind say, oh, white paper, unwritten? Or does the mind perceive without words what is it that it perceives without words? Is it a universal means of understanding? Is it the image, like this is an object and it's out in space and it's white, so in our mind we cognize, oh, that looks like these other objects, it's thin, but it doesn't use words to cognize that this is paper, but it uses the word paper to talk with others. Look, I have a piece of paper here, but it uses something else. What is that something else that it uses that makes it know to itself that this is paper without using the word paper? What is it? Is it image? What is it?
Well, symbology. You're trying to get an answer where you're still using other condition. You're pointing to your two crowns, and you're calling that the mind. You know, this is where the karma, the collective, plays into a role. You know, individually you can have your own, but then you have to realize you're in a program with always in the program. A person says he thinks outside the box. I'll show you in a short period of time a couple of details. So as I said, the language, you don't see it on the object.
Le cambié el calzoncillo porque estaba orinado.
¿Y por qué le dejaste esto apagado? Afortunadamente yo vine a chequear.
Oh, se me olvidó.
You there?
Oh, I missed something.
No, I just thought, you know, I'm not sharing for the sake of hearing my own voice.
What,
quite well
what was it I missed?
When I say that, again, back to this is a simple one. Everything that's behind you is the same ideal. So even your own vessel. So when I say the language itself, you do not see on the material. I know people like to use the subjective, objective. Let's bring it back to the unknown and known. So this is a material. Everywhere around you is material. So you don't see the language, and the thought that I'm giving, you're having a thought. So you're pulling out from somewhere. You might think it's there, but you actually have liquids in your body. There's actually sodium in it, there's memory, but even that is beyond all of that. But from a very fundamental point of view, is you don't see paper. You see the material and you describe it. It gives it away, you describe it. So now the fact that you say it's a paper, white piece of paper, Foursquare, I can use thousands of different, well, not me per se, but thousands of different languages. It shows it's not there. So then you're having, those are experiences. All of those are experiences. It's like when somebody says you go to anger management. I said, listen, did you go to joy management? Did you go to sadness? Why do you want to control? Control is the opposite of trust. You trust within your own kingdom that I'm expressing an emotion. Just don't become a professional at it. This is where people get caught up in the positive and negative. I want to be happy all the time. Those two shall pass. You as the observer, observe those things. That's it. I'm saying the word thing because you're coming from no things, from the unthing. We're using a language to describe things. So when you're describing it, you first have to understand the language. We're using a meaningful language, English. It's a combination of Latin, Spanish, French, and Germanic. They're meaningful languages. They're not comprehension languages, and they're not healing language. They're not even creation languages. So once you have this language we're communicating, I have to use meaning to describe it. And this language is very sloppy. But nevertheless, this is how people say, I'm going to rationalize. Yeah, with this meaningful language, you're not going to be able to heal the molecules. You might have to use Sanskrit and understand tonality and all that. So when right back to what you're asking, Jay, because you're trying to look for the answer. This actually should open up many things. If anything else, it will actually make you question a lot of things. Why have I lived 50 or 60 years and not realizing that I'm using experience with thoughts and emotions, and my lineal experience is this material. This is where the first 7 years of any, if people value the concept of reincarnation. If they don't, I just try and say, well, then why the fuck are you here the first time and only time? Let's play the ideal there is no such thing as rebirth and reincarnation, but the words give it away. RE means again. That's why we're living in the illusion, play, and many words have the word act in it. Fact, factually, practical. So until people start questioning, and what they're doing is they're looking for feel goods. No offense, Louis, but you're looking for a feel good. You know, how do I find myself? Yeah, you are. At least and as long as you're honest with yourself. Forget about truth. Truth is something else. And this is where most people
I feel good. What
that's
can I
right.
do about that?
That's important because I've heard many times out of your mouth feeling. A person that says, I drink and I'm dependent on certain kinds of chemicals. Most people aren't really dependent on the chemical that's coming from alcohol. It's the emotion associated to alcohol, which is usually anger. Smoking is grieving.
Dopamine,
serotonin.
serotonin.
That plays a role. And then there's people that do ayahuasca and they don't got a fucking clue what they're doing when they're doing ayahuasca or shaman work. They don't have a clue. What they do is, I want to have an experience, but they're already having an experience. Those language that you're having. You know, a person can go from excitement to sadness in a moment. It's your attachments to those or resistance. So it plays both. That's duality. That's suffering. That's what most of us can grasp in one lifespan. Suffering. Life and death, unknown and known, do with or without us. It doesn't matter whether we're here in the form of a sequoia tree or in the form of an insect. Now, I know as a human species, we think we're fucking clever. We never become wise. We become clever. Well, we're the highest species here. Well, then explain how the alchemy of steel and plastic and rubber come to be. How does all the language come to be? How does the molecule? People never get to that awareness of questioning. What they're looking for is answers. And I'm only an agitator for myself, so I'm not really trying to say that to you guys. You guys can do whatever you want for your own life.
I think you're doing a good job, Dominic.
Well, yes, but Dominic, but back to the paper. Are you suggesting that I am able to perceive and cognize this first without the word paper? Because if I'm a baby recently born and I'm shown this, that baby doesn't have the word paper in its vocabulary unless it remembers.
Well, what's being done,
Jay? Past life.
What's being done is conditioning. You're conditioned from birth to death. That's the ego. That's all that is. That's conditioning. And a lot of it's done in the womb. A lot of it's done in the womb. You want to teach a baby how to walk, you walk. You want to teach a baby how to speak, you start teaching it tonality, such as A, B, daddy. Those are words. That's all conditioning. And if a person doesn't become aware that they've been conditioned, you won't understand. You're not going to comprehend the ideal. You're associating a thought that wherever it exists to a material. Everything around you, your hands, your body. If you went, I'll give you an example. I've gone to the flea market and somebody will say my name, Dominic. I won't turn around. Why? Because I know that's that person not talking to me, because I understand about my senses. But tonality plays a major role. But if it's my mom calling me, I will turn around because there's a recording going on all the time. Human beings don't realize when I lift my hand, I put over here, that's a different sense. But we think that what we call common, which is an arrogant word to give each other, it's just senses, which is your thoughts, your emotions, and all that. Oh, sorry, not my thoughts. I got deviated on that. That's another sense where it's coming about eyes, sights, ear sights, and all that kind of stuff. Is it really common? Can I see my experiences through Lewis or yours? I can't. So then the question is, what the heck are we debating about? We're only sharing with each other. That's just somebody's opinion. I'm going to look up the sky. I'll see the sun and the moon. Okay, so I can call it Horus, I can call it a positive energy, or I can see the moon, I can call it a negative energy. And then the earth is grounding. There's your trinity. There's your triangle. Now, a lot of this stuff is in esoteric teachings where they will actually talk about the stuff. The written work is actually the dumbed down version of it. So going on again, sorry guys.
We are definitely sharing, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
Now, what we get out of that sharing is up to each one of us.
Mm-hmm. Hence the apprenticeship program.
There you go. So I'm glad that you joined this Saturday Zoom. It's a beautiful thing. I'm surprised that somebody looks at us from the outside. I find it quite interesting and lovely.
Thank you for joining us, Dominic. Mm-hmm. You've blown my mind.
I sure hope to have you with us next Saturday if it works out, and talk a little bit. I wanted to pose a question, a parting question. You said that when we look at a piece of paper, we look at material. Actually, when we look at anything, we look at material. And based on what I proposed before, I would kind of put a note in there, a little star. Material, star, explanation. we look at material and non-material, right?
You're using the non-material.
Because the paper is made of what? The paper is made of molecules, it's made of atoms that make of particles. And the particles don't take the whole space of that paper. Actually, the particles take about 0.9, 0.000, I don't know. Mike, maybe you can tell us how much of it is materialized and how much of it is not, because an atom is what, 99.999% empty. So there is more non-material than material in the paper. So I want.
But what do you mean by non-material? What if the space is material? What if empty space is material?
Well, then it's fully
that's
fully
where
full.
Zero is, Kelvin is at, and that's where from where arises things. So maybe
I'm looking at the whole of reality right there. Okay, if you want to take it there.
Louis, in that sense,
what is non-material is what's in your mind. What's the word paper in your mind is non-material. That's what's non-material.
Non-material is everywhere, just like material is everywhere, because the zero cannot be zero for a long time. It becomes one. So all these distinctions are mind-made, mind-created. So I just wanted to put that in there. Maybe this is a theme of conversation for next week, that when you look at a piece of paper, you're not just looking at material. We have to pinpoint what we're looking at. And
the words you're using, hold on, Louis, before you go on there. When you look at material, and then let's say you kind of brought in Mike into it, where you say you go into atoms. The word that you're saying, material, atom, molecules, that's in the non-material. You're making a description, no matter how you shape-shift that piece of paper. If I rip up this piece of paper, the word rip is again in the non-material. If I use the word plastic, you don't see plastic. If I say black.
So we agree. It's just we're using different words.
It's not about agreeing or disagreeing. That's the clever ego playing a game again. You can't see through my senses. I'm sharing. The agreeing, disagreeing is a feel-good ideal. But again, you're using a word. That's all you're using, a word. You're trying to break down where the external world is one experience. The internal world, your kingdom, is another experience. Now, you could break down the internal world and looking inside, and then you find out the kingdom, all the molecules still doesn't exist there. You're just seeing another variation of the material. Biology plays that game. That's another dogma. We're looking for an external experience without realizing, but we're using words to describe it, which is its own experience. The physical world is just one experience, the external world. And once you realize you're in an objective realm, which is called the material, you're using the spiritual, the unknown, to describe it. That's it. Outside of that, then you could walk around thinking, I don't see a tree. I see another material that I call tree. I can call it a sequoia tree. I can call it a tree that's laying on its back. Those are all experiences. The material is still one.
Understood. Well, I'm going to have to go. Next Saturday, I think we need to have a Zoom where we don't say a word. That way we'll be able to experience everything properly and not mar it with words. Listen, guys, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Luis.
Sorry, Mike, we didn't have you long enough.
No, Mike,
I can't get enough of you. Get enough of you.
Now Mike can tell us the mathematics of reality.
Okay,
Dominic, nice meeting you. What was your last name again?
Tersini, Luis. My surname, my parents' forefathers' last name is Tersini.
Turcini. Turcine.
You're in Toronto?
Oh, yes. With an S. Tursini, not Turcini. Okay, Tursini. Nice meeting you.
Nice, Louis. Have a beautiful day.
I look forward to another meeting on Saturdays. Guys, I bow down to you. See you later.
That was wonderful. What do you think, Mike? What is the gist of this that you've heard so far?
Well, I have seen this huge cloud of illuminated and multicolored words swarming, expanding, and I'm not sure what I have seen in it other than that.
Well done, Mike.
What do you see here? What
Hyro.
happens when
I see a hyro.
Oh, and what's in my hand?
Well, it's a hyro shield. It's a way of disguising hyro.
A hyro shield?
Yes, it's a way of distracting attention from hyro.
Oh. Okay. It's because in the book I'm studying, it's trying to describe the functions of the mind, and one of the functions is imputing things. Without names, things cannot exist. Without names, things cannot exist. So without the name paper, this cannot exist. How can that be? This is the book from the book.
You're reading somebody else's warped sense of cleverness. The object still exists. How do you describe it? How do you describe it? How would you describe a book? You would see an object and you would give it a name. You can call that a hammer if you wanted to. We can get a colony of people to call that a hammer, and go to another colony and use the word French for sandwich, and then they would say it, but it would not deviate from that particular. Just look at it as a symbol. That's all it is. Numbers are no different. It's a symbol. We have to be conditioned to understand 1 + 1 = 2. But what we're being conditioned is all this digits. What does 1 stand for? What does plus stand for? What does equal stand for? You know, this is why I know you weren't here, Michael. I shared that with Lewis, where you take the number 9, opposed to you multiply with anything except for 0, it always adds up back to number 9, because there's a reason for that, because those are gauges. You know, that's the spiritual world meeting the material world. So for you, Jay, as long as you can grasp the concept, you might have to meditate that, you know, listen from within and say, I've been in a world that I just use descriptions.
How to understand the mind. So maybe the mind loves language, because if we didn't have language, we couldn't tell the other person, here, I got a piece of paper. Mm-hmm. Can a dog do that?
No, dogs do different kinds of communications. They will bark at a certain thing. They're using sound. It's just that we're not speaking that language. Like you just said a statement that we liked language. Well, then why don't we know all the 6,000 languages, including American Sign Language and Braille and all the other different languages? There are all kinds of languages out there. Colors is a language. There's people that can play instruments and the note will associate with a certain color. There's people out there that can actually put a book underneath their bed and they can absorb that information. Who am I to tell them whether that's true or not? But if it comprehends with them, because maybe they're tapping into the 12 receiver that's within your body.
It's hard to learn a new language. We
really?
like to
okay, hold on. Let's stop and think about that. You said that, okay? Let's see how quickly that can prove that otherwise. How long did it take for the whole world, the world pandemic in Greek means all people. How long did it take to put almost everybody wearing a mask? 6 months. So that way of thinking is an erroneous way of thinking. We have a lot of excuses. It's like talking to a criminal. He has his justification, no different than somebody that's a scientist. He has his justification. If I gave a scientist all the elements in the world, put them on an island and said, listen, I'll even give you extra 20 that haven't been discovered yet, they wouldn't be able to make steel. They would understand it, but they wouldn't know how to make it. This is us as a species being clever. Why do we wear a mask? Well, because we already have on mask. I'm a father, I'm a mother, I'm a scientist, I'm an electrician, I'm a plumber. Those are masks. That's called persona. This is where when people want to do philosophy, they have to learn the ideal of questioning reason, one's own reason, not Socrates or Hegel. Who fucking cares about them? That maybe their teachings of value, let alone Jesus or Muhammad or Buddha, but what's the teachings? The teacher and students should never oversee the teachings. And this is where most people think, well, I really love Jesus. Who fucking cares? And if they do care, then why are you telling me about it then? I want to lead by example. Well, then lead. Both in physical and mental, you know. Ponder that, Lewis, because I'm hearing you say things and you're holding up a book. Book teaches people to be very linear. That's all it does. Oral teaching is by far more superior because you're engaging all your receivers. Now, how a person knows that? How do you think most kids get conditioned at a young age? You repeat things over and over verbally. You don't go around giving a baby a book unless you teach it when it's in the womb, and men have done this. They've taught the child, the baby that's inside the womb, and most of those children become extraordinarily intelligent. But does that make them intelligent, or just reveals humanity is still at a very humdrum awareness? You know, I'm saying this jokingly because I'm being arrogant to myself. You know, I throw myself under the bus. I drive the fucking bus. Sorry, my language, guys. I drive the bus. You know, this is where people think, well, I'm older. I said, I'll show you in a short period of time. You know, fuck all. That's just to prove to each other, we got to be at this awareness as a collective. It's easy to say we're one, let alone we're separate. You know, most people forget that you're a sovereign being. So then why do you want to work with the ideal of having governments? Well, that's the way no, that's the conditioning. Even the people that are arguing governments don't understand they're being conditioned. Humanity cannot rule each other fairly, let alone compassionately. But hey, we're still in the system, so it's good to at least understand when you're in it. Don't worry about changing it, because a lot of these systems have been structured for hundreds of years, and it will continue. Like right now, they're structuring a new system. They'll bring in digital currency. They'll bring in UBI, universal basic income. There are also a lot of them are eugenics. We should be at 12 billion, but we're only at 7 billion because they force women to do birth control. United Nations mandated 1 child per family in China. What do you think? It's Chinese that do that? No, there's people that are involved. You know, Bill Gates and all that, that's just public wealth. That they're not talking about private wealth.
But going back to it's difficult to learn a new language, but you said, no, it's easy. We learned the word pandemic.
I never said it's easy. I never said it's easy. But when we say that, that's an excuse, because knowing that we can all put on a mask within 6 months tells you that we can be reconditioned at any time. The only difference is we forget that we've been conditioned in the first place. Once you become aware of all the programs, TV, radio program, internet programs, schooling program. It's not an education system, university. That is far from it. Most people come out of university know fuck all. And I say that out of pure kindness, even though somebody said, but I made a lot of money. Yeah, because it's about commerce. Most people aren't going to understand how the moon and sun works anymore, let alone how astrology works, let alone how the body really functions if they didn't read a book. That's conditioning. Once you become aware you're conditioned, then you can recondition if you feel that it doesn't serve a purpose. Belief system has its value, but its limitation. Knowledge has its value, but its limitation. Wisdom and understanding falls under the same suit. Once you become aware of all that, then you have many choices. Then you can move around. This whole concept of free will, that's some fucking idiot talking. As far as I'm concerned. Now he might turn around and say, well, don't, but that's me being arrogant. Sorry, guys.
What?
Do you choose to not believe in free will?
I choose to be aware that there's many choices, and free will with the word F-R-E-E has sounds and frequency in it. The fact that we are actually conditioned, then basically how does free will comes in? Most people react opposed to having the ability to respond. So when they say the word free will, they're denying themselves of the variations of choices. Now, people that are more times not open and closed don't realize there's many variations even to the mind. You can be narrow-minded, shallow-minded, open-minded, intuitive-minded. You can have many variations of the mind. But unfortunately, we live in a very black and white system, either or. So when people say they don't have choices, no, their choices just aren't favorable. I don't want to make that choice because I know I'll lose my job. I said, okay, so you're more concerned about the consequences than you are about the choice that you're going to make. That's where trust comes in. So back to your initial question, Mike, do I value it? That's one of the variations of choices you have.
So how does one learn a new language? How does one learn a new language in 6 months?
Well, some of the easy steps in learning a new language is how you learn the old languages. Repetitive, you repeat things over and over again. You try to sound it out. Some people are very good at learning orally, so they'll wear headphones and they can learn from that. So other people have to be around other people to learn the language because you're picking up their energy and you're using the word. Some people can watch it, learn it from reading things. That's, again, variations of learning. I'm not downplaying completely book written, but I'm just saying it has its limitation. Like we live in a world that we have two hemispheres. You know, king and queen, that's where the concept came from too. So when you're actually reading from left to right or right to left, it's like when people don't understand what the word, you know, when you hear land, air, water, and space, that's the terminology for laws. Why, we think we got the alphabet soup name just because we just invented it? No, nature means wild. So until people are aware, you know, what man called man-made laws, I said, no, men don't have laws. You either have an inner guidance or you just have disobedience. Take your choice. You know, then we're forced to what? Enforce it. We have so many police officers in the world. Does that help crime? No. We've had so many lawyers. Does that help justice? No. We have so many doctors in the world. Does that help with people staying healthy? No. So then, therefore, on that premise of reduction, then we have so many books. Is that helping people become aware? No, it doesn't. That awareness is always your choice when you choose to go inwards. And then you can use the outside world to confirm it or denounce it. You know, like people worry about poverty.
What do you think?
Go ahead, Mike. Sorry, Mike.
What do you think, Mike?
I think it's fairly straightforward to learn a new language in 6 months. What you do is you find a country where they speak that language. You go there and you take a job at the local equivalent of 7-Eleven. As people cease to beat you up or yell at you, you realize that you are learning the language.
That's right. That's right. Oh, Mike, I like that one.
Do they have 7-Elevens in China? If
Hmm?
I want to learn Mandarin, I would have to parachute into mainland China, out in the rural area, maybe. And then I say, where is the nearest 7-Eleven? I need a job there. Oh, we don't have any of those.
I like that one, Mike.
Well,
like
equivalent.
I think what some people usually do, Jay, is they want that immediacy. People want a pill form for their health. They want to learn a language today because they watch some romantic, or they want to say, I just watched the Olympics. I want to be able to run like the fastest runner from Jamaica. I was like, well, you know how to run, but what are you really saying about the craft if you think you can pick it up just like that? You know, people don't realize they're insulting another human beings, what they've learned, regardless if it's a devious craft, but it's still craft nevertheless. If a person says to me, he's a crook, he talks and walks like a crook, I admire the fact that he's at least he's not a hypocrite. You know, but do I agree with his or disagree with his practice? It's of no concern to me. It's not my life to live. This is where we get caught up thinking that, you know, Mike gave a valid point, and that's another variation of choice. But a lot of people say, but I can't afford to go to China. Well, then that's your excuse. See, we have many justifications, which are excuses. You know, this is why when, you know, the advent of sports and result, winning or losing, but they don't teach them all the different variations of crafts that's within it. Most people just want the outcome. They see a rich person, they only see the outcome and what they think they can do with it. They don't want to realize what it took for them to get to that point, all the struggles they had or all the success they had. You know, this is where positive and negative plays a role in it, the feminine and masculine. You can't denounce one without the other, and vice versa. You know, and this is where, again, awareness comes into all of this. I could say the word awareness, no different I can say the word love. When somebody says to me, self-love opposed to loving the self, I said, one's pride, one isn't. You know, because the self, what is the self? It's a program. That's my interpretation. It's a program. It's conditioned. You know, what is love? Love is an energy. You know, if you love your child, that could be based on obligation and duty. But if you love another child, the child that's watching the other child be loved, that could literally be love. It's an energy. You know, but son, you have to love me. I said, no, mom, you're asking for obligation and duty now. That's not love. Love is something I choose to do willingly, not because I'm been told to or because we're family and all that. Most people aren't going to come to that awareness. And when you do, then you got to practice that stuff. Not to say I practice all that, guys. I'm my own hypocrite.
Let me go back to your question for a moment, Jairo. This business of how do you learn a language, or how do you understand words? One of the obvious questions that comes up when people start dealing with the meanings of words and how do they understand words is the fact that you're given some new word. Perhaps it's a word like ataraxic, and you ask somebody to explain it to you. They will explain it to you in presumably words that both of you are already acquainted with, that you both understand already. But then if they use the word happiness in the explanation, then you can ask them, but what do you mean by happiness? And then they've got to explain that word in words which are a little farther back that both of you understand. And of course, after a while, you realize you cannot define every single word without ultimately getting into a situation where you are talking in a circular manner and defining a word in terms of something else that you have already defined. Well, you get into a circular loop of definitions eventually. This is in some sense a fundamental problem with the idea of understanding words. So somehow or other, when we grow up, there are a number of words that we must somehow learn without necessarily starting with words to explain that particular word. And how that process works is a bit mysterious, even though we see it used on very young children. And in some sense, we're well acquainted with it. Does that make any sense?
And that would be for children a dictionary with pictures, like A is for apple, and they show a picture of apple. It might be cartoonish looking apple. And B is for bee. They show a bee maybe. And C is for cat or something like that. So maybe we have to end up with a dictionary that has images of the words.
Well, Wittgenstein talks about this business of sometimes maybe you learn words by showing, by pointing. For example, if you want to explain to a young child for the first time what is meant by an apple and what is meant by the taste of an apple, you give that child an apple to hold, you cut a piece off, and you let him or her taste it. And in some sense, what you are doing is you are defining the word apple, and you are defining the idea of apple flavor for that person. You are showing that to them. So presumably, a certain amount of our understanding begins by looking at things that we directly experience or sometimes indirectly experience. Now, one of the implications of this is if we are carrying on conversations with people, we have to somehow or other appeal to a common base of experience in order to use words which are going to carry meanings for them. This is what happens most of the time. And this, of course, is why we tend to get into trouble when we have philosophy discussions.
So, so does that mean that when we're learning a language, we have to start off with the experience of an object, like paper? And so you wish and have the intention to learn Spanish. Oh, but that's if you're an adult. you would you would just connect the word paper with papel. That's the Spanish for paper, papel. And so you would just have to say, oh, that is their equivalent. But as a child, you don't have but as a child where you don't have a language, as a child you don't have any language to refer to, so you have to use an equivalent with the experience of paper and say, look, that you should impute or equate this experience with the word paper, and you have to memorize it. You have to store the image of paper and connect neurons to the sound paper.
Well, I would say that, you know, this may be one of the ways that we learn to use a word like paper. I would not say that is the only way in which we gain understanding. We really don't know exactly how our minds work. Are there other avenues of understanding which feed into our minds other than simply sense perceptions and the way that our brains organize them? I don't know. I would leave that possibility open.
And that's just nouns. What about verbs? How does one define ripping? So
just did.
When you experience the rip, you experience the ripping, and then somehow label it as ripping, and you store it in your mental dictionary. Ripping. That's a verb. To rip.
Yes.
And then
now you may have
so
to
it's incredibly complex
several times, but after a while the child will pick up what ripping means.
After thousands of rippings, and not just of paper, of other things. Ripping, what else can be ripped?
Can you rip Aunt Ophelia?
Can I rip? What is that?
I can hear the child saying that now. I don't like Aunt Ophelia. Can you rip Aunt Ophelia?
Oh, okay. Rip her apart. Aunt Ophelia. She's nasty to me, or she beats me up. Let's rip her. Maybe
she wouldn't let me stick my fingers in the electric socket. I don't like her.
So when the child learns a verb, it starts using it on nouns everywhere. I'm going to rip this. I'm going to rip this. So that's why a child of 2 years old goes around ripping things in the house. See what can be ripped.
Well, clearly a certain amount of experimentation by the child with the words is a normal way of increasing the child's understanding of the word.
But what if the parent says, no, don't rip that? And then what happens there? So the child, does it say, this is not to rip while my parent is here, but I'm going to try to rip it when they're not here? Or does it say, no, I shouldn't rip this?
You're talking about a moral teaching. You're not talking about meaning of the word. The meaning of the word comes in it, suppose in a different way. Suppose the child is trying to learn the word heavy, and he tries a sentence such as, green is very heavy. Then the parent says, no, that doesn't make any sense. Green is not something that you say is heavy or light. There you're dealing with the understanding of the word.
So does the child say, I disagree with my parents. I'm going to make a heavy green. So he goes into art and paints a painting with green, a green heaviness.
Well, in that point, in that case, the child has been corrupted and set on a path to becoming a philosopher.
Or what if the child is still on trying to figure out what can be ripped? And he can't rip this CD.
Yes.
So there's some things that can't be ripped. So he classifies that, those objects that can't be ripped as unrippable, except you can rip music onto a CD. Then that's another use of the word rip. So there's different uses for one word that makes language so unbearably complicated. Therefore, we should just give up on language. Imagine the person that is born to wolves and the mother wolf takes care of you. What language skills will that person grow up with? None, as far as I can tell, except maybe barking, different kinds of barks and different meanings for that.
Well, I think that person may, in some sense, learn a language, such as if it tries to run away when its mother wants it to stay and it gets a bite. That bite is, in effect, the word, no, you have to do what I want.
So it stores the bite as a word or a means of communication.
Means of communication.
A body language.
Probably a little bit.
It's a body language
description.
A painful kind of body language. What do you think, Dominique? He's taking notes.
No, I'm doing something else. Well, even the metaphor or the usual example of a wolf, like science have kind of discovered about auras and all that. Pack of wolves understand their place. The fact that they're walking on 4 paws, that's another version of communication. What I'm hearing you ask, Jay, is if you have a computer and it has a program, its first impression could be its lasting impression. So how would you actually put another platform on it? You would have to have directories. So once you've learned a language, say you've learned a language of English, more times than not, again, the conditioning is done in the womb. What the mother and father in the community does not share openly, the child picks up on that. Mike kind of says philosophy. I'd rather have a child that questions things than opposed to a child that says, well, dad told me to put my hands on the stove. That's obedient. He can join the military. Or disobedient. You want a child that's always going to question things so they can understand for themselves. If there is understanding, more times understanding is more comprehension than there's awareness. You become aware of your environment. So once you learn a language, that's your first template. So now, because we're using an English language, it has meaning to it. So now if you're going to learn another language that has meaning to it, you're going to have directories so you can sound it up. But a lot of people that just learn language without understanding its meaning will learn another language easier than somebody else. But I want to understand the meaning of it. So now if it's the same language, like English with the French or Spanish, that have the same meanings to it, then you can actually learn it and not worry about its meaning because it's very similar. But if you're learning like Sanskrit or Greek, which is comprehension language, now you have to make another subdirectory to understand comprehension opposed to a meaningful language. So most people never become aware that you're using a meaningful language, so, and again, you can learn another language, and Mike had shared earlier, it was a funny one, but it was an example nevertheless, where you can go to another country and then you're dealing with energy too now. Like we learn a lot of our stuff when we have frequencies in the air, whether it's TV frequency, radio frequencies, Wi-Fi, electricity. So that actually, sometimes it confuses us. That's where a lot of the disease comes into our bodies. So, but if you like to learn language, no different person can learn a different instrument, but he has to understand that the first one is they're going to be the plate Whether they were good at it or not will determine whether or not the other one's going to be more of a challenge for them. You know, I don't want to over elaborate on that thing because that opens up to other things.
Mm-hmm. Yes, like Greek language, it's all Greek to me, but you say that it's comprehensional language or comprehensive?
Yes. If you philosophize with English opposed to Greek, it's kind of like people writing with their right hand and left hand. You'll get different interpretation because you're dealing with hemispheres now, writing with your left hand opposed to your right hand. So if you're learning Greek, it sounds in frequency is different than English. Same with like people that do healing. Sanskrit is one of the better languages if you're going to do chanting or mantras. You know, and plus, if you're speaking among a whole bunch of people in the community that speaks Sanskrit, you're walking around with this language that actually is constantly rehealing your molecules in your bodies. Scientists will catch up on that shit one day.
Yes, like the languages in India are like Hindi. They're kind of based on Sanskrit.
No, it's an old language. A lot of people don't practice that. And then you have to factor in the caste system. That's another conditioning, you know, where you're born in a certain womb, then you're taught certain things. It's kind of like the whole idea of people don't understand slave and mastery. You know, those are both conditioning. You can have twin boys, you can raise one to be a slave and another one to be a master. Once you become aware of those conditioning, then you can, through observation of those conditions, hence the double split experiment kind of idea, roughly, it was a rough one, your body changes. It's that constant universe always shifting itself when it realizes you're becoming aware of it. Now, some people can call that growth.
What do you think, Mike? Did that
what
answer
do I think of what?
That's true. That's true.
What do you think of the word what? What? W-H-A-T. What is referring to objects? Who is referring to persons? Where is referring to location? Why is referring to understanding its purpose. When is referring to the time that it can happen. How is referring to the process of the what's and who's interplaying. What do you think of what?
You missed who? Which.
Which.
Sweet.
Which is referring to selecting this versus that. And this is any object that's closer to you relative to that is farther from you. So there's time involved, no, space-time involved. Did I miss any WH? Let's see.
Well done, Jay.
Where is, or did I cover that one? Where is location?
Wherefore.
Wherefore art thou? Wherefore is referring to location and possession. Wherefore it belongs to some to who or what. Why not refers to understanding that if it didn't happen, then this would happen versus that, which I'll look up in Google what comes up after I type in WH. See what other words begin with WH.
Wine.
When, what, where? What's up? It's an app.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but it refers to what's up. What's up? What's up refers to what is going, something that is going on in the present. Because you wouldn't say what's up to something that happened in the past, would you? Oh, but I used the word how. That doesn't start with W. So I have to eliminate how. Or did I? Hui. And what about the word white? White is the color that includes all the whole spectrum of the visible light. Now, what is the non-visible light? Is it non-material, non-experiential? Is it still there? So there are things that are there that we're not aware of. Oh no, aware of. That doesn't have an H in there.
Now, Jairo, I think I'm gonna have to tell you guys goodbye because I've got some things I want to start working on.
Like breakfast?
Well, not necessarily breakfast, but some actual work. But it was good seeing you guys, and it was good meeting Dominic.
You might.
Okay. So I enjoyed talking with you this morning.
Yes, we enjoyed you.
And we will have to see about getting together some other time.
We didn't get to the Grassmanian.
Find out, we have to find out just who God is and when we can make an appointment.
Nice share, Mike.
Okay.
We didn't get to the positive Grassmanian. Okay. Is it that?
Yes.
We'll get that next time.
Yes, we can also see about Grassmanians.
Grassmanians.
We'll talk to you later. Take care.
Enjoy yourself, Mike.
Thank you for dropping by, Mike.
Bye.
Bye.
So we're back alone again, Jay. Speak to me then.
What do you think? What do you think about that? That was wonderful.
Yeah, it was enjoyable. It was enjoyable. You know, it sounds like you had a lot of inquiries for yourself, and that's good to have those kind of inquiries. As long as it somewhat makes sense for you, Jay, or you're trying to put those things together, it brings value to oneself. You know, I don't mind entertaining different ideals personally.
Yes, what it's because you blew my mind with the paper, and you said this, if I can paraphrase it, that this material object, we could say white paper, that's using language, but can we transcend, or is there something that happens before it that doesn't need language? And I wonder what that is, intuition or what?
Well, okay, okay, here's one. We said white paper. What objects are you referring to when you say the word intuition? Language always exists with or without objects. You know, like if you can wrap around the idea of, opposed to looking for the answer, just become aware that you're describing, listen to the words, you're describing the material. And it could be any kind of material. You know, when people say philosophy, did they show you a picture of philosophy? No. You might see the word philosophy, but where do you see the language when you say philosophy, or you have a thought philosophy? You don't see those things. Once you realize you don't see those things, that's in the thing called no thing. You can call it the unknown. You can call it the darkness. You can call it whatever you want. Spiritual, I call it spiritual because time and space and thoughts and emotions we cannot see. We cannot pick up with our senses. So we've lived most of our life, Jay, in the unaware state. You know, like you have all those books behind you, but where is book? Where is bookcase? Where is wall? Where's your shirt? Where's your glasses? Like all those words, every word you use is an experience. But then you associate to something, things. So when you hold up that piece of paper, like I was holding earlier, you don't see piece of paper. And if it was this, then explain why I can describe it with many different languages. It proves it's not here. But the object, the material is still there. That's the illusion. The illusion is, I think my language is associated to this. That's the play. It's like when you watch a movie, you know it's not real, but it's real in the sense that you know human beings, the material is real. When somebody says to me, it's a scary movie, I say, why don't we ask the producer or the cameraman, or you can't get eaten by a shark if there's no music in the background. We're still children not realizing this is one big experience. We don't know what death is, and we don't know what life is. We might look at somebody and say, well, they're no longer there. Well, who was they? What was his energy that was in that body? You know, this is why when I was talking to Lewis, I've heard Lewis before in other videos, he's made a choice that he'd rather be content or happy in a certain area. So for people to philosophize about things, they're not really looking for the world situation. This is why when somebody says we're all one, I said, no, you're saying that, but you're not really trying to show that. We're not going to understand what's happening in China or in India like I do. I try to understand that in China, in certain provinces, they're doing credit system, or in India, they have a caste system, or in Cuba, they put restrictions on them, or in Canada, we're one of the Commonwealth. Most people don't want to do that. What most people want to do is they want to live in a very small little world. They live in a major city, so that proves that they're not independent, they're interdependent. Me and you, who made our clothes, who made our cars. Now, if we decide we don't want to live with humans anymore, then we can live up somewhere with nature. Then we have to be interdependent with nature. So back to your question earlier, or possibility, if you were raised by wolves or whatever other animal, if they accepted you in the pack, there is their own language that they talk. And it's not always verbally. It's, if me and you were living with a bunch of animals and then all of a sudden we saw some of the ones that we never really run with, they start running away from a forest because they're either sensing there's an earthquake or there's a fire gonna happen. That's a language. See, we think language is what we talk out loud. That's not, you know, this is why when people say, if we're sitting beside each other, I said, hey, well, Jay hasn't said nothing. I say, yeah, but I'm reading his body. He's crossing his legs. You know, he's twitching his eyes. That's another language. And we think that's not communication. No, it is communication. We're always communicating with each other. When I talk to people, I'm picking up how they're feeling or what they're thinking. You know, like they're feeling uncomfortable or they want to interrupt. I do that because I realize I want to find out whether or not that person is emotionally developed. Because if they're not, that's why we have wars. You know, I'm fighting for my country. Why? You know, the whole ideal of having, you know, people that say Black Lives Matter. There's one example. Jay, have you ever seen a human being that's black? Have you ever seen a human being that's white? No, that's checkerboard game. There's clubs out there that are very low. We're one race with different shades. But we think, well, I'm Italian, I'm Portuguese. No, we're one race with different shades. Well, I'm a Catholic. I'm like, okay, that's one dogma. Roman Catholic. Well, there's the other dogma, state and religion. You know, and then another one is I'm an atheist. That's another dogma. I'm a scientist. That's another dogma. The number one dogma, belief system, is commerce. Everybody's working, giving their energy for what? A piece of paper? Oh, okay. But would we actually help each other as a race if there was no money? Maybe, but are we? No. You know, this is where you become aware. This is not for me to say it's right or wrong. I'm just observing it. You know, this is where people say, well, Dominic, I love, why you love because that person was kind. Love is when even the other person's cruel. You're not here to judge them. Oh, okay, whatever. You're going to do whatever you're going to do. I'm the agitator for Dominic. It's like a healer. A healer is a healer for themselves. If whatever creator, call it whatever you want, God, aliens, reptilians, whatever, if they think that you've been blessed because you grew a garden and you have more than you need this year, then you can give other to your neighbors. That's the same thing with me. If you're a healer, then you heal yourself first. That's what the word doctor means, teacher, physician means healer. But who are you the physician and healer for? For yourself. The outside world is the extra. This is why when people philosophize, they're sharing their views. And most people, when they spend too much time writing a book or preaching to other people, I said, so you stop your growth. See, I'm just sharing with you guys. To me, I'm always listening to me. You know, I've heard you guys talk about certain topics. I could elaborate on it, but I figured they're going to learn whatever they're going to learn at their pace. And for most people, they could reach 90 years old. And I know by talking to them, they're still children. And how I know that is if I start saying words and they get offended, I said a child, usually between the ages of 7 and 14 is when you're supposed to develop your emotions. If I turn around and said the word, some will call them violated words, and the person gets offended, I said, you're not developed yet. Those are just words. You should question and say, why did you say that? Just to get your attention. It goes back to language. You were talking earlier. Language comes in many forms. But if you think that language is only a verbal thing, then that's what you're going to learn. I said, okay, so then how did you learn, let's say, Spanish or Italian? Well, I learned a lot of it when I was in my mom's womb, and she spoke it when I was around it. That was your first impression. But how do you teach somebody else when they already have a language? That's the more challenging part. They first have to become aware of their own kingdom before they start learning something else. Most people never become aware of that, Jay. Most people don't. And all the thousands and millions of books written out there shows it still hasn't been, because people forget you're your own sovereign being. Now, I'll give you a simple example. You'll hear politicians, prime ministers, chancellors, dictators. They'll read from a script that's been handed to them, and they'll say, we're here to represent the people. Do you know they're not talking about you? You're the citizens of the nations. You're not the people. People in America, you're from America. The Constitution was written quite clearly. The 12 families that got together, they wrote in capital letters, we the people and our prosperity. Our prosperity means bloodline. They weren't talking about the slaves and the citizens. So if they say you can bear arms, only if you represent them. This is why when people fight against the military and the police officer, you're fighting against your own family. They're your own citizens. The people are middle class, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett. The elites are Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and then the wealth are people that set up corporations like the Queen or the Pope, you know, but they're all rulers. They're not the owners. This is where people forget. Landlord means ruler. There's a Lord God. Who's the owning, the God that owns all this? We've never met them yet. So when people talk about Satan or Jesus, I'm like, okay, so you're playing games again, are you? You're using words. You know, but hey, they'll live that. That'll be their mantra. I'm a Christian. Okay, Jesus never wrote nothing. Socrates never wrote nothing. Plato was a kid. So how important is all of that? Yeah, but I read the Bible. Oh, so you read all those stories? What's your story? This is what I tell people. What's your story? What's your mystery? You know what I mean? What's your place in this realm? Are you here just to treat it like it's a garbage dump? Are you here to be a slave? Are you here to learn? Because there's other planes. Like, let's not worry about what NASA, never a straight answer, tells us. I see two objects in the sky. This is called critical thinking, deduction. You see trees here. You see rivers here. You see water, lakes. You see mountains. Do you see anything you see any of those two up there in the two spheres up in the sky? No. So how can you assume that we're in a round spherical plane? I don't know. It's a game that other beings, call them jinns, call them angels, call them demons, call them whatever you want. But it's a game. It's like playing chess. Forget about winning and losing. Why is your checkerboard? What does the king mean? What does the pawn mean? Why did they put a queen opposed to a wise person as that piece? That's how it was created when the pre-Zian times was. But who gave them that technology? This is all about inquiry. You're an old soul that probably has forgotten you're an old soul. You're taking a lot of information. You're trying to understand a lot of that. But the thing is, when we're thinking that we're taking information because we already know a place that we want to put it, then you're not going to be able to take it all in. You're taking it for your own benefit, not because I want to make money off of it. I want to write another book, or I want to do another speech or whatever, you know. And then there's public and private, like you've chosen to record this. So now we've had a private conversation, but it'll go out into the public. This is why when you go to court, all courts are set up in this realm as commerce. You don't want to be in public court. You want to have private court, not public court. There's a big difference. Me and you and Louis or Mike, if we went into a restaurant and we declare, all four of us, this is a private conversation, but meanwhile, a person next door to us, next table over, heard our conversation and went to court, I said, you violated us. That was a private court. This is how systems will work. You have to understand how the game is played before you even think about whether or not you like it or don't like it. It's like if me and you were military men, we want to know our friends and also our enemies before we even think about going to war. That's why I said earlier, I'm okay with somebody being my friend, but you better be prepared to be my enemy, because my enemy will at least call me out. He will defend me and attack me. Most people they call friends, no, they're just acquaintances. I want my friends to say, listen, Dominic, you're acting like an idiot. Hear what I just said. I'm acting like an idiot. I'm not an idiot. When a person says you're good, I said, no, he's acting good. You know, you don't want to condemn a human being by saying he's a bad person. Based on what? If me and you were able to print all the money in the world, it would be business as usual. But for other people, say, well, that's not fair. What do you mean not fair? Before COVID, we always had poverty and we had wealth. We had greed. You know, what I've noticed during COVID, and I told people, I told all my acquaintances, I said, listen, what you're going to notice during COVID, the lack of kindness and consideration for humanity with each other. You know, most people are only worrying about going back to work. They want to go back to their slave job that they don't like. You know, that's the world we live in. Now, if a person thinks for some reason we live in a kind world, I said, so are you going to defend all the crime that's been done to each other in humanity? Forget about whether or not there's gods or aliens. We still have to take accountability for ourselves. Hitler only told his sergeants to tell the kids to kill other human beings. So who should be responsible first? The one that did the last act. You know, this is why when people philosophize, what they're doing is they're rubbing their penises. I say that, I told my buddies many times, I said, listen, if you want to masturbate, do it by yourself. Why? Because you're going to argue with me on my views. I'm sharing openly with people. And that's why I'm not concerned if people say, Dominic, I agree or disagree. I said, you can't see through my senses. How do you explain to a blind person that's never seen the color red? But they do. You know why? Because we don't realize there's things that are beyond our capability of understanding. It's like me and you. When you go to sleep, who runs your body, Jay? I don't wish this upon you, but let's say you get into a coma state. Who functions the body? Why did Buddha say, let me fast and meditate? Because your body, whatever's running your body says, if you eat food, I got to process it. But if you stop eating food and you fast for 20, 30, 40 days, then actually when you go into a meditated state, listening state, I can work with you. This is where most people, they think they're just the material. That's it. I'm looking at the body. And meanwhile, today I just showed you, where do you see the language hand? You don't see it. And even the thought, I'll point to here, but is it really coming from here? Because there's 10 receivers here, counselors, and then it goes to the king and queen. If the king and queen are loving each other, you have a good kingdom. But if they're separate, then you have a chaotic kingdom going within oneself. But people think, yeah, but the world's cruel outside. No, the world's a reflection of your internal world. You take care of your mother, for example. I heard you say earlier, or somebody. That's a kind act. But how many people would do that only if they got paid? You know, we lived in worlds where before the advent of cars and planes, communities where you would live within a day's walk from your community for all your life. So you would help your community grow or perish. Today, most people don't even know how to give a shit about each other. Forget about whether they say the word I care or don't care. No, most people don't know most people don't have wisdom, discernment. You know, when people say to me, Dominic, I don't judge, I'm thinking, really, who told you that? I want to talk to them. Well, I do. I said, okay, so if I told you you have a nice dress, and then tomorrow I told you you have ugly shoes, what you're really saying is you've separated your likes and dislike. You accepted the one judgment when I said you have a nice dress, and then the next day you didn't like me. I said you have ugly shoes. Those are my perception. I am the beholder. Who's the beholder? Me. I'm just gauging outside the world. I'm looking at a tree. That's my choice. But once you realize that the language that I'm using and the thoughts that I'm experiencing are not there. This is the part that hopefully you'll come to aware if that's what you're doing. If you're not seeking for enlightenment, my question is then why would anybody do philosophy then? Philosophy is about the study of the self. It's not about the study of others. Know thyself. Who's the knower in the self? It's not know others. But if you know thyself and you know the program and how it works, then you can see yourself in others. Just to share a little bit, because I realize I yap a lot, but I take in a lot way more information. I've listened to thousands and thousands of other different people, and I realize every so often in a 10-hour conversation, I might get one little piece of gold nugget. You know what I mean? Like guys like Socrates, okay, whatever. I'm hearing other down, you know, it's like me saying something to you, then you say it to Lewis, you say it to somebody else writes it. By the time it gets to the next generation, it's already been watered down. You know, so how are we going to think, well, Socrates said this? I tell people all the time, I said, but what do you think? What do you feel? You're using a total stranger's name. That's like those people that says, well, Jesus, I don't want to hear about Jesus. What's your story? You know, next time you hear somebody talking about Jesus, so listen, let's stop right here. I don't want to hear about Jesus. I want to hear your story.
My story is that you helped me to realize that paper, the word paper, is for us to take responsibility on an object, to maybe own it, to share it.
Do you think it's owning? Okay.
To use it.
Change it.
And so the words that we place on objects is so that we can be able to own them or share them or use them. And but the object without paper, if we I guess that would be in experiencing it. I experienced this object without knowing the word paper, if I never had the word paper in my vocabulary, I would experience the object and it would still be there, but I would use it for different things. Maybe I would use it to try to cut something because I didn't know how to use it. Oh, we have a new member joining us, I think. Oh, Joel Schuster from Toronto is joining us.
No, there he is.
Our
Darwin.
friend in Toronto, Darwin.
Hey, Joel.
Guys still here?
Yep.
Yes.
How is everyone?
I'm pretty good, Joel. Yourself?
COVID free so far.
COVID free, yeah.
I assume. I'm not taking a test every day, but I feel
Are you
fine.
breathing with your breathing device still? You exercising?
Oh, I haven't been doing
come
that.
on, man.
Where is it?
I had a really, really scary experience this week. Wait till Jairo gets back. I'll tell you about it, Dominic. I went to another meeting in Tampa. I forget, Jairo, you're near Tampa, aren't you?
Well, he's in Florida in some ways, but yes.
Yeah. Hi, Jairo, can you hear me? No, I guess he can't.
Oh, wait. No problem, Joel.
I lost
it. Yeah, you see, you're not taking care of yourself, man. You're going to get sick again. You've had the virus. You got lucky. You got recovered without any lingering effects, apparently, except that you're even more handsome than you always were, but you need a haircut.
That's true. It's looking good.
But you need a haircut like me. I gotta go and get a buzz cut because we're not going to barbers for another month.
True.
Anyway, I went to a meeting in Tampa this week. And I got there late, so I didn't want to disturb anybody. I just wanted to listen. And there was a guy gave a presentation, a financial planner. It was all very nice. And then he said, has everybody gotten their vaccine? And he said, it's really easy here in Tampa. They've got the arena or the amphitheater, one of those things. Took me 30 minutes, including the 15-minute waiting time after I got the vaccine. I drove up, got out of the car. They gave me the jab. I sat around the car, and I was gone in 30 minutes. So I thought, wow, they're really doing a good job down there. They're all going to be vaccinated in no time. And I just read a research study that said 25% of the people in the United States aren't intending to get the vaccine at all. And there weren't young people there. So I figured, everybody's going to raise their hands. They had their first vaccine, their second vaccine, whatever it was. And one gal said, I didn't get it and I'm not planning to. So I didn't mean to sound belligerent or hostile, because I just read a report that said the percentage of people that don't want to get it is coming down. So I said, so you're you're the 1 in 4 that don't intend to get it. And I guess she took offense at my comment, and others did as well. So much so that there were maybe half the meeting or close to a half the meeting had no intention of getting it. And some of them were over 60. And it made me a bit nervous about saying, gee, am I ever, even if I get vaccinated, am I prepared to go to Florida?
Why not?
Wow.
So I don't know. I don't know what's going on down
there. So I don't know what's going on.
Why is that? There's going to be a lot of people that, on political or whatever their thinking is, will just still be carrying that virus around even if they don't have the effects of it. Something more to worry about.
Something more to worry about. Oh, if they want to travel to Europe, they probably have to get the vaccine. Yeah, because I have a friend, a lady friend that she lives on the other side of town, and she and whenever we talk on the phone, because I haven't seen her all this pandemic time, but personally, but so when I talk on the phone with her, the first thing she asks is, or when I was in the hospital, or after I got out of the hospital, and she would ask, so when can we get the vaccine, or do you know about the vaccine, or where can you get it? And now it's now that it's available for everyone over 40 or something in Florida, then so she got the vaccine a few days ago, but she felt
sore
pain all over her body for a day or so. Didn't feel good but now she's okay. But she's always asking. Well, the reason why she got it, well, she's 61, but she got it because she's from Spain, and she wants to travel to Spain to visit her mother and family, and so she got it because of that. Because otherwise, she probably is kind of hesitant to get the vaccine. But maybe she feels safe now that she's getting it. Well, she got the first dose, so she has to wait maybe 4 weeks for the next one, or 3. I'm not sure which one she got.
Up here in Canada, we got to wait 3 months
for the second one.
Yeah.
Wow. That's kind of dangerous, isn't it?
Well, it doesn't sound great. I'll be honest. It doesn't sound great at all.
Have you gotten your first one?
I got my first one, but not my second one.
When did you get your first one? A week ago?
March the 17th. St. Patrick's Day. I had the intervention of the saints so that I could get my first dose. As my sister-in-law is Irish.
Which one did you get, or what's the brand? Or
I got the AstraZeneca. That was the only one we could get. The only one that was available where I went. So I took it. I would rather have had something else, but It was either that or nothing, so I opted for that.
What do you think, Dominic, of this crazy get the vaccine world in a hurry?
Well, you're probably going to put this on Zoom, so I'm not going to share all the ins and outs of viruses and masks and all that kind of stuff, because you'll just probably get spam, or you'll probably get deleted. Well, you'll probably get strikes. So and maybe in a private conversation, I'd probably have more conversations about what a virus is or isn't, and what a vaccine can and cannot do for you, let alone what a mask does and doesn't do for you. So I'm not going to.
But you're an agitator. You love to agitate to enlighten us.
Well, it's not. I'm not. No, I get it. You know, people are going to do what they have to do, and you know, more times than not, it's for commerce.
Yes, we kind of have to do this, but yes, there's people that they're maybe not anti-vaxxers, but they've been studying this and see that, wow, this has been put on us kind of fast without testing, so we're kind of guinea pigs at this. Yeah, I guess it's good to get so that maybe people will be more comfortable and go to businesses. But still, like when you get the first dose, you should still stay masked and all, because there's a scientist, or I don't know if he's a scientist, but he understands how viruses work, and he's saying that after the first dose, you shouldn't get overconfident and say, okay, I can go out more, or no. If you get it between doses, the virus after the first dose is for some reason viruses have some kind of intelligence, and when they see there's an opponent force trying to get them, then they adjust and hide. It's like arms race. Somebody described it. It's like okay, there's an opponent. Okay, so I gotta be alert, and so they kind of hide, and they might enter a cell in the body and mutate and become body-like, so it can become hidden from your defenses. So, or you might think that it's an enemy, so the body might end up attacking its own cells.
I guess, Jay, I can talk about.
That's what.
I won't talk about the virus, but I will talk about how a body goes into disease mode. So, because we're energy beings, we've introduced in the last about 100 years radio frequency, electricity, Wi-Fi. So the material is a reflection of the internal world. So because we're energy beings, the body doesn't just become diseased because of the chemicals that's in the foods, because most of us don't grow our own foods, and most of us don't eat our foods in the appropriate time. The reason why we have different colors is because we eat them different days. I'm not saying I practice that. So when your body's in disease mode, way before, we'll say pandemic, meaning in Greek, all people, COVID, most people, if they're already in disease mode, and then they try to do some sort of scientific intervention, that's why most people get certain shots at a young age, because your body's not already in disease mode. So when a person takes something, we'll call it a vaccine, and they do it when their body's, whether they know it or not, in disease mode, they actually could be doing more harm. It's like most medicines are prescribed onto people that are healthy. And then you got to factor in blood types and all that kind of stuff. So there could be people that are eventually going to be carriers of a virus, we'll just say, because the virus comes in many forms, and they can travel and they could be ailment to other people. This is why when people are elderly, you know, it's not just a heart attack or diabetes or certain things that affects them. It could be finished off by a pneumonia. So I don't visit my parents solely on the fact that I know I go visit other people sometimes. I do all my due diligence, but the thing is, if I end up getting a cold and they're dormant, we're sovereign beings. We have our own choices. It'd be nice whether or not a person says, but I have no choice. No, you do have a choice. And your choices are, you can become very informed of all the reasons why you would or wouldn't do something. I get the herd mentality. Most people think it's herd immunity. It's herd mentality. If I go to somebody's store and it says that the requirement, whether they agree it or not, is to wear a mask, I will wear a mask. It's out of respect for that human being and for commerce. When somebody says to me, but I'm not going to wear a mask, well, then don't go to that person's store. You know, like that's people just being disrespectful to themselves. And again, I've shared with you, Joel, you're hearing it from me the first time from me. COVID's just going to reveal what COVID's revealing. Humanity has lost its way when it comes to kindness and consideration to each other. whether or not there's some sort of hidden agenda and there could be eugenics involved in all of this, rolling in digital currency, we still have choices. And in those choices, if you want to live in a major city, interdependent, you know, like when I look at it, because we're from the same place, Joel, Toronto, Ford and Trudeau are just reading from a script. They're not the ones making it. They're reading from a script. And if they say the people or the citizens have to do certain things, that's what we have to do. Now, you don't have to do it. You can stay home if you want. You can go live up in nature and then become interdependent with nature. But, you know, but I don't like when people want to rebel and say, I don't want to wear a mask. And no different than the other people that say, well, I'm going to wear a mask. I said, you should question both. Why am I going to wear a mask and why I don't want to wear a mask? You know, being a good obedient person, obedience and disobedience has nothing to do with questioning things, you know, and too many people in this world are too busy being obedient and disobedient, opposed to ask, what is a virus? What isn't it? What's in the vaccine? Well, what does a mask do to me? You know, well, who runs Canada? You know, who prints the federal notes? These are all inquiries. Now, if you go in there thinking that there's a right and wrong, then you're not going to be a true seeker. A seeker is an observer. You just say, oh, that's interesting. There's a lot of crime being had. Oh, that's interesting. That's it. So like if Joel decided he wanted to do a vaccine, all the power to him. If he's going to understand labels, you know, like most of us walk around with cell phones. In the disclaimer, it says right on the disclaimer that this will affect your EMF. That's for legal reasons. Vaccines, all of them have disclaimers that this is a trial. You can't sue us and there's going to be people getting sick. That's a disclaimer. That's for legal purposes. Most people that are applying it to you, whether it's a nurse or doctor, aren't chemists. They don't understand chemistry. And if they do, they'd realize I would have to understand the person I'm giving it to because I have to factor in blood type. I got to factor in whether or not that person is in disease mode. Are they taking certain allergy pills? This is why most people don't realize there's trillionaires in this world, and it has nothing to do with the public wealth of Bill Gates and Elon Musk. They're small fishes in the world, and they are it. So anyway, I don't want to go too further because, like I said, I'm trying to be very neutral in the sense that I'm not in a position that I have to take the vaccine. And if the time comes, my job till then is to become very informative, not this outside, inside. You know, I know why I would do it eventually for commerce. If I want to travel, I want to work, I want to get my pension, that's commerce. It's not about health. If people truly think it's about health, then I would ask them, I said, then why do you go to restaurants? Why don't you grow your own food? Why don't you raise your own cattle? You know, this is full of shit when human beings talk that way.
What do you think, Joel? Oh, you're muted.
Yep. I think Dominic has some very good points. And I learned a new term this week. Maybe you're both familiar with it, called apophenia, which is a human tendency where people perceive patterns with random data that may or may not be related to the data. So when I went into that group in Tampa and I thought, wow, you know, here's one guy here's talking about getting the vaccine, how easy it was. I was just focused on, I wish we had it that easy here. You know, I'd be down there in a heartbeat to get my second vaccine if I could. And not even thinking for a minute, like out of left field, that there should have been one person out of 4 there, according to this research study, that wasn't going to get it. I don't know whether they're right or wrong. I don't suffer the consequences of them getting it or not getting it unless I'm in close proximity with them. But then when I discovered there were a lot more people like that than just 25%, it surprised me. And maybe I'm just making perceiving a pattern for the whole state of Florida, saying, wow, this is scary. What does it mean if nearly half of the state isn't going to get vaccinated? What does that mean for me? Because that would have consequences for me. I would like to go to Florida next winter if I can, but will it be safe? And in the United States, they don't require vaccine certificates to travel within the United States. will they require them to enter the United States?
They will. They will eventually.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've been following it, Joel. Sorry, Joel. In other countries like Italy and Malaysia, if you want to do business, you have to go to the government online and get certain certificates so you can do business 16 kilometers, 20 kilometers away from your home. If you want to go grocery shopping, you know, in certain places in China, they've already put in the credit system. This is a major shift because we have technology. They're able to put cell phones in all of us in the last 10 or 15 years, and they're able to put a mask on everybody in 6 months. This is a conditioning, a reconditioning. So you wanting to travel to Florida, they're going to probably restrict traveling as a whole. They will restrict it, and you'll have to go through hoops to go to certain places. They're going to take a lot of privileges away from a lot of people, and that's just part of the process. This will be a 10-year conditioning. It's not going to happen over a year and a half. A lot of this is even written down. That's the sad part about it.
Okay, guys, I'm glad to see you found your way here, Dominic, and Jairo is treating you okay. Even if he's not doing his, you got to get after him to do his breathing exercises. Yeah, he's not coughing or choking anymore. That's a good sign.
He's his own sovereign being. He's his own. I didn't even know his condition. He's his own sovereign being.
Yeah, but you can see you're still his friend, so you can still help him out a bit. Remind him. How's your mom doing, Jairo?
My mom's doing well. She's gonna have a birthday this month, April 11th. She was born in 1922, so that'll make her 99 years old.
Wow, that's amazing.
Thank you, Joel, for introducing us to the word apophenia.
Yeah, it was a new one for me. It was a very nice guy. He runs a group in California who put it up on a presentation, and it's really interesting.
Isn't that like well, it says random data. Can we consider random data is like hearsay? Like we hear, oh, this guy died of COVID. Oh, this happened to him. And so we're gathering all these data points, and we're trying to come up with a conclusion. Right. So from the data that we're not doing scientifically, we're just gathering it here and there. We're trying to come up with a hypothesis and all that. We're trying to use the scientific method on just things we hear on the news or hearsay from folks and friends, and we say, oh my gosh, and we come to a certain conclusion, or one way or the other, depending on what we listen to.
A pattern.
And isn't that apophenia?
Yeah, it's a pattern. It's a human tendency to make a pattern out of the information that's coming to us, and the pattern may be valid or invalid depending on, you know, how clear our thinking is, or how much data we have, or
so we base our decisions on it.
All data is that way, guys. Science, unless you're using your own senses, that's exactly the word you use. That's all. We didn't go to the moon, so we can only take it based on what somebody else told us. So that's all science is, and this is where science people. Go ahead.
So isn't that?
I gotta head out, guys. I gotta have breakfast. Good to see everyone.
Nice meeting you, Joel.
Okay, thank you for dropping by, Joel. Thank you for the word apophenia.
Apophenia is a good one.
Investigate further, because I read books like the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, to try to figure out how we go wrong in our decisions, or maybe we base a lot of our decisions on incomplete information, and we come to conclusions that aren't always correct in other books.
Most of them. Like, for example, how would you prove it that we went to the moon? How would you prove you went to the moon? Unless you would trust somebody that actually went up there. That's information, that's hearsay. And just giving us pictures does not confirm that. So when people give you stats, you know, like 10% of the people like the president. Okay, so they go to a certain area, they interview 100 people, that's 10%. That's not the whole. This is where people don't understand. Stats is no different than religion. It's a story. Now, if you actually said, listen, Dominic, I actually took out my own heart, or I saw my mom's own heart, or my dad is a surgeon and I trust my dad, then you're gonna use him as an extension of your trust. But if you don't know your dad, most people in NASA, if not all people in NASA, they're working there because they're making billions of dollars. They're not there for you to tell you the truth. Media is no different. Media, they're getting paid lots of money. They're, even in the media laws, they don't have to tell you the truth. This is where critical thinking comes in. You know, a person that does a movie, he's acting. So when Joel came in here and he used that, that's all. It's not this, well, you know something, COVID, they're giving me stats. Right now, what they're doing is they're doing the screening. You go in there, they put a swab in you, and they do a test. You're not showing the symptoms. What they're doing is you have a virus already in you, and then they'll send it to some laboratory, whether they test it or not, and they say, okay, you have it. But if you have the symptoms like cancer, most people get cancer at the age of 60 to 65. Once you get one of the 5 variations of cancer, you have about 5 to 6 years left to live. But what they've done is they've done screening at the age of 50 because your forefathers had cancer. So when they do the screening, they say you might get cancer. So hey, we'll do chemotherapy, we'll do all of this, but they never teach you what cancer cells are. They get activated only if your body goes into disease mode. The cancer is kind of like the worm in the tequila. It's there to kill all the bacteria. If you don't do detoxing or fasting, you're basically going to do chemotherapy. It's a business. Most people don't cook their own foods. They don't live in environments that are healthy. So their body goes into disease mode. So when they talk about COVID, they're playing a fucking major game on everybody. The virus that they're talking about has not come out yet. And when it does, a lot of people are going to see the symptoms. Forget about testing somebody. You'll know the symptoms. You'll know the symptoms of a person when they have a cold. And when what they end up doing is then they give you a vaccine. So that means every year, you're going to have to take the vaccine because our body always builds up to the immune system to it. But if your body's already diseased, the immune system will go backwards. It'll always win. Your body will not be able to fight it off. And then you'll end up becoming diabetic, having a heart attack, fucking Alzheimer's, you name it, you'll get it. And I don't wish that upon people, but at the same time, one will be more prevalent than the other. We have a lot of foods that aren't healthy for us, but we eat it. Sugar refined, we drink coffee, we do all this stuff. We don't sleep correctly. And then we look surprised. I can't believe I'm not healthy. No, most of us aren't healthy. So this is why when people say, oh, I'll give you the example of a vaccine. Me and you go to paint a wall, okay? That wall has never been painted. It's drywall. We paint it, we prime it. That's the first vaccine. And then we go again after it's primed. Then we actually paint it with the next vaccine. Then we painted the wall. But what happens when you go to paint that wall the first time and it has all this magic marker all over it? How many coats of paint would you have to put to get rid of that magic marker? That's how many vaccines people are going to have to take just to bring their body up to health. This is a trillionaire's game. When they did all the vaccines in Africa, a lot of them were actually sterilizing vaccines. They're doing population reduction. It's a big game. Now, you might actually have an asthma problem. You might have a breathing problem. Magnesium might help that, especially if you have sleep apnea. You take magnesium, whether in liquid form or a pill form, you can actually, it loosens your muscle. That's what it does. This is a lot about healing now. Like I said, I've done a lot of research. I'm an old soul. So I enjoy sharing this kind of information because I don't put value whether or not people understand it or don't. So when I hear Joel talking about certain things, I'm like, you're taking information that comes from even me. It's our responsibility to question everything from within. Does it resonate with me? Does it make sense? This is why, that was a simple one I shared you today about you don't see language. And for most people, they would have a difficult time with that. Oh no, Dominic, I don't believe that. I'm like, so you're still stuck on belief systems? I'm not even talking about knowledge here. This is about awareness. Now, somebody might say, Dominic, you're full of crap. I said,
yes.
Then go question it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not here to confirm that anything I ever say is true or false. What I am doing is talking out loud. People feel uncomfortable. I get it because they think they've achieved something in 50 or 60 or 70 years, which is really fuck all. Rome collapsed in a couple of months. How long did it take to get to that point? Centuries. And where did Rome really go to? It went to Yorkshire, England. Where did it go from there? It went to New York. These are empires. Maybe next one will be a dynasty, like back in the days of the Chinese dynasty. Information's out there, Jay. Information's always out there. It's just, unfortunately, most people think information should come in a form of a podcast, should come in a form of a book or whatever. No, information is within oneself. If you're listening from within, it'll guide you. You know, whether it's in the presence of another person or in the presence of sometimes a trickster will come in, and I value tricksters. They play a role. Sometimes tricksters are there to make sure that you don't hurt yourself going in a deviated little area, right? And I know most of us are full of something. You know, shit has many values. For fertilizing, it could also be toxic, and it's also good for flies to basically hibernate and have more flies in them.
So tricksters are beneficial.
Sure they are. Sure they are. If you're receptive to the ideal that I'm not looking for an answer, you will see both the trickster and the other person that's trying to help you. I said, why are you guys both interfering with me? Unless you're here to serve a purpose. And that could be for their own purpose. You know, most people say, but I only want positive things. I said, well, then you're not going to really understand a trickster then, because you're asking for something you don't understand what you need. It's like going to a therapist. You have a problem, you think you have a problem, mentally or emotionally, or maybe even physically. You go to your therapist and say, listen, I'm going to sit down with you. I'm going to tell you what my problem is. I'm going to tell you I'm going to tell you what the solution is. Well, then why are you here then? You know, when people go to university, waste a lot of energy going to university, and fuck all up by the time they're done. But now I say that for so they can question it. What do you mean, Dominic? That's not for me to question. I've just questioned. I've put it out there for you to question it. What did you learn in an old system? You know what I mean? Like, you know anybody that creates anything? I don't know.
So Dominic, how can we go from being a science worshiper to being a real scientist, to really doing a method, like on the left side, the scientific method, it seems like the scientific method is expensive. It takes a lot of work. So we prefer to worship science and don't ask questions and just accept whatever the experts tell us to do.
Isn't that what scribes were? Wasn't that back in the days of telling people that you can't teach your kids how to read or write so that the scribes would have an advantage? When meanwhile, the truth of the matter is that the fact that you can speak, that was the advantage. People communicate way better with verbal than they do with reading and writing. So it's kind of like science is no different than state. No different than biology. You have to investigate yourself. Now, if you think everything what you are is just on the physical level, then you have to explain where those language comes from then. You know, so science is just one aspect. You know, now if you want to work for, that's what the word worship means. You work for. You want to work for religion, worship it. You want to work for science, work for it. But you got to put your own effort. Most of us are lazy. They want somebody else to do all the work, but then bitch and complain about it. No, be responsible. You're your own sovereign being. Now, if a person says, well, Dominic, but I'm going to understand how to make steel. I said, show me person. Show me the person that can actually fasten steel. Please show me. Then I can be the apprentice. Until then, what we do is we go to a grocery store called a warehouse, push a cart, pay with a piece of paper that owns by another family and say, well, I want them to tell me to make healthy food. No, that's your makers. Whoever owns those grocery stores and those foods that come to it is the person you work for. So now, if you want to question, best thing you could do is question science. But before you do that, you have to question you. Who's you? What makes you tick? What makes the body work? You know, I've just described to you language. So, and that's not yours. You get to experience it. So once you realize that thoughts and emotions are experiences, then you can look at the material and say, that's just one major experience. So for me to say, well, there's biology, I'm using the word again. So what's constant there? Language. You know, science, language. Worship, language. The Bible, doesn't matter what book it was written in, and even that, King James, was written by a Mason. Who fucking cares? I say that out loud. Who cares? If the person says, I care, well, then don't preach to me about it. Be the example of that book. If it says, love thy neighbor, I value the concept, love others better than the way you treat yourself. And it works the other way too. If you treat other people, if you treat yourself with harm, treat others with worse, because that'll get their attention. I say this all with all sincerity, Jay. Most people are fucking idiots. And I say that because I want them to realize, I said, oh, you have somewhere to start from. To think that we're intelligent, and when I just shared to them a simple thing with language, I said, okay, you're a doctor. So who invented language? Who invented the books? Who invented the house that you actually had to go to learn school? We don't become aware of that stuff. We think we're our own gods, but we can't explain how the body really works. You know, we go by hearsay. Well, somebody told me the blood works this way. Okay, then investigate. Go inwards. Yes, whatever you were told outside, we as spiritual beings can confirm it. Yes, the blood actually does store memory. That's why you have a body of water called salt. You know, do we live on a flat plane and a round plane? You live in a bit of both. You know, this is the crap that we feed each other over and over again. We do. And I'm feeding crap right now because I realize it is what it is.
But
yes.
But how can we become scientists instead of science worshipers when we don't even have time to take the time to investigate, to ask questions, to go through a test and to verify the data? There's not enough time in the day to investigate what's happening here, what's happening there. We could go crazy. We could subscribe to Time magazine to get an idea, or maybe some other, or we.
Okay, so you said the word "we."
It's so complicated.
You say it's complicated. So you said the word "we." Are you talking we externally or we internally? You have a kingdom. That's where the "we" is. The I is this up here.
How do I become very scientific and skeptical and verify instead of accepting what's given to me and obey or disobey without questioning? How
you
to become
you should question things.
Seeker of knowledge, of gnosis about everything?
Well, gnosis means inner. That's well, okay. You're saying a lot of commandments that denounce you. First of all, space and time does not exist here. So you're in moments. That's it. Moment to moment. These moments shall pass. So that's one thing. Once you actually start questioning your way you talk, you start hearing yourself. You're saying stuff that has no business saying because there's no validation to it. What you call time, a clock, is a gauge. That's not time. The sun and moon is not time. Time does not exist here. Now, if you do the investigation, then you're going to start questioning, why have I been ignorant this whole fucking time? Now, you're going to say things like, well, I don't have the ability. Well, Gnosis means inner. You go inwards. You realize there's an inner community within oneself. So now, the external world should only be a reflection of the internal world. If the outside world is confused and you feel that you don't fit in it, then there's a part of you that's on the cusp. But if you fit in, that means you're in a confused world.
Okay, me voy a despedir.
If you have to go, Jay, I'm okay.
Okay. I have to go.
No problem.
Thank you very much
for
your sharing. And I have much to think about. It was wonderful. Come back again every time.
Enjoy yourself today, by the way, Jay.
Okay. Enjoy your day. Thanks. Bye. Dominic Terseni or something like that. Let's see. Go back. So I was looking at this on this new Facebook. Dominic Terseni, I think. That was wonderful. So yes, so gnosis is an inner process of wisdom. Gnosis means knowledge, I understand. And Joel introduced the word apophenia. That generated additional thinking about. I was going to introduce the concept of statistical analysis, like we do that with we have a poor sense of statistics. We're generating our own statistic based on few data points. Okay, I gotta go. Bye. Thank you. Thank you everyone for watching. Bye.